Angels Take Manhattan.
Wow. Well, we have a little question from the audience. Hey.
My sister looks like Amy.
Does she?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, there she is.
Oh,
you do?
Oh,
wow.
People have been commenting. I just came here and I didn't mean to dress up. Just people were commenting. You look like Amy Pond.
That's.
And I was like, okay, I didn't dress up with Amy Pond,
Well, and it's funny because I fell head over heels with Caitlin Blackwood before even, I was like, I know Amy's my character because Caitlin is amazing and little baby Amelia and and you've got the cheeks, girl. Go.
This is a good time to just get up and do a little audience thing because we've met you, we know what you're about, and you got paired with the episode The Aztecs, which is a First Doctor episode. Let's see what our little Amy Pond over here.
Yes,
you want to reach in?
What her episode is.
Let's see what your episode would be. You just need to reach in. Now this is all. What is it? Is it 54? I think I said 64.
That's a giant TARDIS.
It is a giant TARDIS. Just reach in there and grab the card out, and let's see what you get. It is bigger on the inside. That's great. So if you were going to be matched, what episode did you get?
The Doctor's Wife.
The Doctor's Wife. That's great. And that has Amy Pond in it.
That does have Amy Pond in it. It's one of my favorite episodes.
Well, good job. That was a good pick.
So I put it back up.
I'll take it. Thank you. How many episodes are in the box? Something like 300. It's pretty close to 300.
There's a lot of paper in there.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, a lot of years. All right, so you got matched with the Aztecs.
I did.
Now, have you seen this one before?
I did. I am a huge First Doctor fan.
Okay.
When people ask me who's your favorite Doctor, I say the Doctor because they're really, honestly, pretty much all the same person. But Hartnell is really honestly one of my love Hartnell. And he and then Modern, I adore Matt as well, but I adore all of them. But yeah, Hartnell is my boy. And
what is it about him you like?
He's cantankerous and he's mischievous and he is just so. I mean, goodness gracious, he stands there just to this proper old man in the sense, or old man, I should say, and he's just. And then when he just looks at you and goes, and I'm like, it's just, because I'm like, no, sit down, behave. It's just,
Another Hartnell episode that we had on the show, we watched, and that was one of the things that the girl who was on the show, she had never seen a Hartnell episode before, and she remarked about his sense of humor, and she said, I did not think that it was going to be funny, but oh my gosh, it was so funny, and he's a funny guy.
He is flipping hysterical. I mean, every little aspect to his face, because the major difference between these first episodes is that they play like a stage play. And so they're acting with their entire bodies. And so just a little movement of the shoulder and eyebrow, it makes such a huge statement. And if you watch anything that he does, the subtlety is ingenious. And I think that's lost on a modern audience.
Yeah, it can be if they're not used to the format.
If they're not used to it, it's a very hard format to be able to watch.
Just come in if you're not. Now, I remember watching old school TV, format when I was a kid. I mean, we were TV watchers when I was growing up, so that was not a problem for me to go back and watch those. But the pacing's very slow. It's very different. And so, yeah, you do have to kind of get used to it.
Yeah, it's filmed in real time. There's not a lot of background music. I mean, we're used to today. I mean, our episodes are almost
quick
totally
cuts and just
and it's only filmed off of 2 cameras. So there's not 17 camera angles going on. So it's the actor's job to carry the flow of it. So if they slow down, the whole episode can come crashing down.
And just enormous amounts of exposition and just a lot of backstory on the characters, which we don't get a lot of that
Absolutely
now.
right.
It's kind of great.
Absolutely.
So you've seen the Aztecs before.
I did. It was one of my first episodes that I saw.
Oh, really? Yeah. They used to have it on Netflix back.
I watched it on. Actually, I think I illegally watched it on YouTube. It's not there now. If you're going to go check, it's not there now. But yeah, I picked up that one and a couple different ones. historicals.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big history person.
Why is that? What do you like about those?
I just love history.
Uh-huh.
And I also love the modern take on history. So it's one of those type of concepts. One of my other favorite episodes is the gunfighters. Because I can watch that all
Sorry,
day.
my stomach just turned.
I love that episode so much because I mean, like when Steven and Dodo come out of the TARDIS and they're in these ridiculous costumes, it's like, yeah, this is what a modern person would think a historical costume looked like. Yeah, and you know that thing was like bright fuchsia with green tassels, and it's like, I look good.
It's a little bit like when Europeans try to do an American accent, and it all tends to just kind of sound like John Wayne or like the old way, you know?
Yeah,
like, it's not.
very much that kind of concept.
Yeah.
Or it's so much fun, and it's the same thing. It was the same thing with the Aztecs. It caused me to think, and like even today, when I was just reviewing over some stuff before I came in here, there's part of the episode that I go, oh wait, you know, the doctor's sitting here and he's carving a pulley. And I'm like, oh, wait, old man, are you messing with the timeline? So I'm watching this, I'm Googling, did the Aztecs have a pulley? And this is, you know, one of the original things that Doctor Who was looking at. They wanted people to think. This was supposed to be a science and a history show. So, hello, here we go. You know, thank you very much, you know, Verity Lambert, you just made me think on whether the Aztecs had a pulley. You know, you did it.
So
you know. Yes, they did.
Oh,
but
okay.
Coincidentally, they didn't use it for construction. They used it for medicine. Thanks, doctor. They used it to reset bones.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah, I thought it was really kind of neat. And I mean, if you want to like start cross-analyzing that, in the sense that he's making it in the garden with this older character that he's met, who is kind of a medicine woman type of character, you're kind of going, I just got goosebumps, you know, and that's one of the things that Doctor Who does on purpose now. But I mean, this might have just been a little side joke, but they created this, you know, I guess trope in the sense that the Doctor meddles without meddling.
Yeah.
So,
or just meddles.
or just meddles. So but it was a lot of fun.
Let's do another match. Who wants to be matched up? Somebody here, back there. Let's do a couple. Okay. Go. Planet of Evil. That is a Fourth Doctor story. Tell me your name.
Kate.
Kate, have you seen that one before?
I'm sure I have, but I'm trying to remember exactly.
But now you get to watch it when you go home.
Yeah.
There you go. All right.
My sister would do it.
Sister wants a card. Okay, what's your name, honey? Astrid. That's a great name.
It's not here. Astrid, Kate, and Aiden, and my dad.
Oh, I see. It's called The Lie of the Land. That's a 12th Doctor episode. That's pretty recent.
I usually like colored ones.
Oh, you do? Okay. What's your name, hon?
My name's Will.
Will, okay. Let's see what's coming out of there for you.
The Sunmaker.
The Sunmakers. Is that a
I've seen that one. It's a
Fourth Doctor one, right? Okay, with Leela. Very good.
Aiden, Kayla.
We get a time check.
I don't know, right?
Let me check and see what time it is.
It is 11:26.
Okay, so we got time. Tell me your name. Lee, okay. You're an old Doctor fan, new Who?
My brother was kind of.
You got to pick from.
Oh, he's got 3.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's picking.
I
Pick
see
your
how the
favorite.
doctor works here.
What do we get?
Rise of the Cybermen.
Okay. Rise of Cybermen, Age of Steel, the 10th Doctor episode. You a fan?
I had them for years.
Yeah.
Classic Vega was my first.
Yeah?
That's really good. Certainly, episodes they showed us this year.
Uh-huh.
What few I've seen of traveling in the hard one.
Okay.
And of course, the new stuff.
10th Doctor, Rise of Cybermen, Age of Steel. What do you think? Is that a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
I've watched it.
You can watch it again. Okay. Let's do you, hon. What's your name?
I'm Aiden.
Aiden? Okay. See what you get. Dark Water? Death in Heaven.
Uh-oh.
All
It's
right.
a scary one.
I'm so lucky with frozen games like this.
Oh, man.
For companion mismatch, I got Ninth Doctor, Meta 10, and Missy as my combo.
Wow.
That's awesome.
You got all
The ones I got
That's
was I got Rose, Mickey, and the second Doctor.
Good job. Good job.
The combination.
I tried to get picked, but no one picked me.
Nobody picked you. Oh no. Maybe next time, honey. Okay. Well, we're gonna continue talking about the show here. Okay. So, tell me your impressions of this one. This is the Aztec episode. Is if you haven't seen it or if you're not familiar, it's the first Doctor, and he is still with his original companion. So he's got Susan, which is his granddaughter, with him. He's got Ian and Barbara, and Ian played by the incomparable William Russell, who's here this weekend. And they land in 15th century, is it Mexico? New Mexico, okay. And so then they have an encounter with the Aztec people. Did you like the episode? I mean, you said you've seen this one a few times before and you liked it.
I love this episode so much. I mean, it's
what are the things that stand out about this story to you?
There's so many different levels to it. The production quality of this. I mean, this is very, very early on in Who's history. It's matte paintings and styrofoam and different types of things like that. And the actors having to deal with the fact that I'm going to lift this boulder and make it really heavy. And it's like, it is cheesy, but at the same time, it is the best cheese ever. It's very finely aged. The characters are just wonderful to watch. And as I was rescanning through it before we started, meeting one of the actors, or getting the chance to meet one of the actors, such like William Russell, and looking at the episode again, the way I watched it 3 days ago is not the way I just rescanned it 5 minutes ago. Because we've seen him, we see the way his eyes sparkle in person and his personality, and though there's 50 years difference between the filming of this and the way we've seen him now, it adds a nuance to it that I don't think I'm ever going to be able to look at them the same way again.
I asked him about the Aztecs episode yesterday. I said, tomorrow we're going to do a podcast about the Aztecs. I kind of love that episode. What did you think of it? And he says, well, I really, really liked doing the Aztecs, he said, but I hated the fight scene. And
he had a lot of work to be able to do, and it's a very, very physical episode for him. I loved how they did it camera-wise in the sense that you have the camera here, and they're, you really felt you were like right there in it. But yes, it's very, very physical for him. And I also, the character development in it, I adore Barbara. She is one of my absolute favorite all-time companions. I really feel she's like, really honestly, the perfect Doctor Who companion out of all of them. And she's strong, she's perfect in the sense that when I first watched Doctor Who and I went back to start watching the old stuff, I thought that she would be like the typical 1960s housewife. Yeah. In the sense of, I'll go ahead and sit here and, yes, Ian, what would you like me to do? Yes, doctor, what would you like me to do? And yes, there is a lot of that, but she stands there and argues with them. And it's like, no, history is this, and then she's looking at these big, huge, like the high priest of this and the demigod of that, and she's like, oh no, sir, I know this, and insufferable know-it-alls of the world unite. I mean, she was laying it down, and you don't even find that a lot in modern Who, where you'll have a character sit there and go, oh, come on, doctor. Why are you? I'm like, no. It's, come on, doctor. You're going to do this. Right. And that's the way Barbara did it. And I'm like, yes, we need this.
She felt fully empowered. Like, when I very first started coming to Doctor Who conventions, I still wasn't real familiar with classic Who. And, people would talk about how it's gotten so much better over the years. The female characters, they have more power. And I thought that might be true, but as I've gone back and watched some of the classics, yes, you have some of the classic like female companions who are treated in that traditional kind of, kind of fluffy way. But then, actually, there's a few if you go back, and they do kind of take on this sort of gravitas. Sarah Jane had it, Barbara has it, and it's like don't even try to make them the screamer or the one who's just there to ask questions. They actually have some purpose, which is great. Some of their own identity.
Yeah, there is a lot of that, and they eventually do get that. We'll get to that. But in this episode, I just love how she literally was a goddess. And she's like, no, I'm in charge here.
I mean, she took that on pretty immediately. It started out with her she kind of took a bracelet from the tomb,
This
right?
is how it started, grave robbing.
And they ended up outside the tomb. Somebody saw her wearing the bracelet, and they mistook her for a reincarnated,
Aztec
deity.
Yeah.
And she just kind of rolled with it. I mean, just immediately rolled with it. She was like, yep, I sure am, and she just kind of went, because she immediately did, perceive, okay, if I go with this, I can get us out of trouble, and I can kind of direct the traffic here.
And she was an expert. Apparently, she had done her thesis in college on the Aztecs, so she knows everything about it, and to the point where one of the other high priests is like, okay, if you are this god, you'll know what the 7 layers of heaven are. And she's like, hold my beer. Da-da-da, 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 and oh yeah, you forgot this one. I mean, and it was just, love it so much. And in that, it's just great. And everybody had their strengths. They take Susan away and they take her out of this element, trying to break the TARDIS crew apart and realizing that if they break them apart, then maybe they'll make a mistake. But everybody is so smart that they're like, no, if I do this and I screw that up, that could put my friends in danger. So Susan's here and she's being the studious little person, and she does make a little hiccup. And when the doctor's over trying to figure this out, and Dean's over here, becoming the captain of the guard, and the doctor's picking up women again.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I kind of love about this episode, because I am a fan of romance in Doctor Who. I don't make any excuses for that, or I'm fine with that. But this is one of the few times that you see it in classic Who, and he's in the garden with Kamika and just making just kind of sweet little faces at her, and they have some moments and some exchanges, and then the whole thing with the hot chocolate, and we're gonna share this, and she's like, oh, we're getting married now. This is great.
She suckered him good. It was great. So in the storyline, the cocoa beans, she explains that this is our currency. This is how he's like the best line ever. Oh, currency that you can drink. I'm like, it's great. Yeah. And then she had spoken to one of the other high priests in the sense that they were. She's like, I really like him. My world has changed because I can tell there's a glow about you, and she's obviously very smitten with him. And he's like, do you think you'll be able to get him to do this, this, and this? And the doctor, thinking he knows everything, forgets about what this means in their culture.
Right. And
all of a sudden, I love the camera angle and the fact that you literally can hear the needle rip as he goes, what?
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be interesting. Okay. And it's my favorite. Just one of my favorite parts is his expressions.
Yeah. That's good heart. It's good stuff. Well, let's do one more round. If anybody else want to pick and see what episode you're going to be, let's have Andy. Now, you just got matched. You're going to be on the show. And what did you get matched with?
The Mind Robber.
The Mind Robber. So episode 11 will be Andy with the Mind Robber. But let's see what else might come out of our analog version here.
If it's the Mind Robber, I think it's fixed.
Kill the Moon.
Oh!
I like Kill the Moon more than most people do.
Do you?
I do.
Okay.
I think it's insane.
It is insane, yeah.
The concept is bizarre, but the moon spiders are super creepy. I like this comes down to a choice, and then Clara says, no, screw you, putting us in that position anyway. And I love that stuff. So.
Like their kind of banter back and forth.
Yeah.
Good. So not a bad.
No, it's fine.
Not a bad one there, Match Machine.
Mm-hmm.
This is Mr. Cole here, so let's see if you were going to come on the show. He's been on the show a couple of times. I'll co-host.
Genesis of the Daleks.
That's one of your favorites.
Yeah, it is.
That's crazy. That worked out great. Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap it up a little bit. Let's chat about the Match Machine and how we did. What do you think?
Well, it was funny because as I was answering the different questions, and my life is extremely busy, so I literally was answering them as quickly and concisely as I could, literally on the subway. And there's very spotty reception, and I was expecting the entire form to crash. So I was like, I hope this works. And I noticed that a lot of my answers were history this, history that, history this, history that. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to get a historical. I really hope I'm going to get a historical. I secretly was praying for the gunfighters, which is really very funny because I just love that episode. So when I found out that I got the Aztecs, I was like, ooh, that's almost as good as the gunfighters. I like this, you know. So I got very, very excited by it. So I think the Match Machine, I wouldn't say pandered, but I definitely owe it a very large check. Because, I mean, it doesn't, I love Who, and I love being, getting a chance to be able to watch things that I wouldn't necessarily choose for myself to be able to watch. And I really find that with Who, even when you think you have a preconceived notion, whether it be about a time period or a certain doctor or even a subject matter, as long as you go in and watch it with the eyes that, I need to watch this, you're going to be surprised. You're going to find something in it that you're going to relate to and that you can appreciate and be able to enjoy. I mean, obviously they did something right because here we are 54 years later talking about it.
Right.
So it is really it's fantastic, and we're still lucky that we have it still, as much of it as we do, because it's a wonderful piece of television history.
You're right. Yep. So if you went out on a date with this episode, how would that date end?
On a scale of 1 chocolate bean to 10. Oh goodness. Yeah, I definitely would find myself in the situation of the doctor ended up in a situation of, whoa, what that escalated. But no, I did. I love this episode, and if you haven't watched the first Doctor, I think that this is a lovely, lovely episode to be able to watch. There is not a lot of music in the first couple of the episodes of the serial, but the sweet, beautiful music that is in the fourth part of it, as like the lovey-dovey stuff starts, it's really kind of neat because their whole world is changing in that type of sense. So it's exciting to be able to see how that is progressing, not only with the TV show, but also the character development. So yeah, I love it. Watch it. If you haven't watched it, please just.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you come back and do a second round, a second try.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
because at that point I know I will not be as lucky as to get the gunfighters. No, I'm just.
That's great.
So no, it's fantastic, and this is fun that you do this.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. If anybody is more interested in listening to more episodes or interacting with future episodes, perhaps being on the podcast, we live in a Facebook group. So if you go on Facebook and just look for the Doctor Who Match Machine, there's a page which is not really active, and there's a group. So you need to go into the group and join there. You can find the podcast on iTunes. It's just called the Doctor Who Match Machine, and we're also on SoundCloud. Okay, so thanks everybody for coming, and thanks Christine for being the guest on the show. We really appreciate you. And that's it. So. Come up and get matched. I'll be around.
So you really like Space Windex, huh?
Space. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I would not willingly choose that.
We were just talking about that one the other day.
To be fair, it is one of the better ones.
Yes. Then the Mummy showed up, and I was like, that'd be this episode.
That was a pretty. Oh, you can't beat jelly babies in a cigar case. Or cigarette case. Sorry.
That's really nice.
It was pretty classy, and he had a Hartnell tie on.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So.
That would break open and see cigarettes.
What's coming up next?
I'm not sure. You guys know because you're camping out. Yes.
It's their line con.
And they're going to do something with
Oh, Matthew's
Oh,
in
yeah.
there.
and there's one with Katie.
Fantastic. He's
Yeah,
just a
it's
gem.
Matthew Waters. The new Trump with Katie Manning, and then in the beginning with and then Dominic Litt.
I messed up.
jam-packed afternoon of excitement.
Yeah, I'm glad I thought there's a run on run, but it's with one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank goodness, or I would never wake up.
It's a Zoom, for it. It's just really recorded.
Not.
Professional quality audio, wherever. This was the first gift I had.
You can get it.
Audio, but you get it. Yeah. Probably also gets like, if Radio Shack still exists, you can get there. That's fine. You're not the first person who said that. You said that.
That was me.
I think I said it the first time we had one too.
So how does that go? Like free file or how do we?
It can refer to way the record. This is a way. You've got like, yeah.
So shall I just send you
Oh,
like
here.
Dropbox email or just any how
That would be
easiest way to do it?
I can try to get it before the end of the day. We have lots of work to do. So.
That's great. Yeah.
I know it
I'll work on
exists.
that.
I don't play games because I have a thing in my eyes. And I'm actually, it's a thing called simulator sickness, and computer games will actually cause me to pass out. So I actually don't play them, so I know it exists. Yeah. Yeah, I did know that. She is Fallout 4.
Oh, I have Fallout 4. Yeah, I haven't finished it because there's so much. Okay, I don't want to give you any spoilers. Have you gone anywhere? A lady needs to see.
No, I heard like on radio. I haven't. Wow. No, I'll get there eventually.
That's the bodice. And the original. This is the from the article. That was the original one, and this was the. That's about 2 weeks of work. So about 40 hours. A large costume usually takes me about 40 hours.
So I'll get there eventually in terms of that plan. I have to go check to see what X.
Oh, okay.
But no, thank you for the. It's on the. Okay, yeah.
Well, on YouTube, I just want you to hear a section of the voice like it.
No, I'll pull it up.
Okay.
So thank you so much. Yeah.
Feel like young, like awesome.
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah.
Who didn't?
Say, and then just hear.
Oh, she's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Why am I eyes just like that? Oh, we should get rid of our horrible mirror.
Yeah.
That was funny.
That was. Is it history you didn't extra?
I have no idea. Not for it.
Carry on. Enjoy the beige.
Have fun, guys.
this is going to be. We hope. Itchy.
Where do you want to go, Jeff?
Let's go over there. Yeah. Straight across.
Straight across, not
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think?
It's amazing. He does that video with a laughter. It's a cheap ass line.
Sorry. Yeah.
I think it's going to get events stuff in the work all the time. Constantly. This is fine. This is no. So you take the.
You want to put the front row?
I'm happy right here. Sometimes you get the front row and see less. And when they get it on stage, you get a little bit. They get it right.
Yeah.
What it is at home. Okay, mileage. It said I only slept 3 hours last night. That's not right. I'm only gone 3/10 of a mile. Back and forth in this hallway, you go fast. That's real quick. It's really cold at home. It was warmer at midnight.
Yeah.
2 tenths. Big creek flooded. So anything more happening? Okay. Wait, fresh drop.
Just in case anybody did not know, there is a schedule change. Matthew Waterhouse will be actually doing a Q&A panel.
Wait,
Is it the?
the revised, or the same one you had earlier?
Yeah, I grabbed it. Oh, it is, okay. Yeah, looks like you didn't make it, so.
No, nothing was flying last night. Or
So you've
yesterday.
got 1 o'clock with William Russell. And that's really the only thing. I like Matthew Waterhouse. He's
Yeah.
funny.
I'll sit through him.
Okay, William Russell at 1 o'clock for our picture. I think that's it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, yeah, we'll go. We'll yeah, I'll figure it out.
Well, I'll
Yeah,
go
no,
up.
no, you don't need to.
I'm not going to right now.
Okay, yeah, we'll go upstairs.
We'll go outside. I'll get one.
It's hard, you know that. Even on days where they extended, this is what last week, they weren't gonna extend it. So that never changed. That never changed. That never changed.
I love those big police cars.
Mine got stolen. So.
It was in the garage. Wasn't it?
My one, I have one in the garage, but the rolling bottom of the other one, that's stolen.
I'm actually going, flying out to Chicago.
When we were moving it, we were like right in the middle of moving it. The third day we were gone, it was gone.
Hi. What's that? Well, we're both doing it. I think we should both do it. We could. That's what I was told. Yeah, well. Well, both do come together. Hello, I'm Eric Roberts.
Wrap your mustache.
They're just arguing over who's going to be interviewing.
You're so much better looking in person.
I interviewed him for I could, absolutely, I could. So, Eric, tell me, how did you get into the role of master? It was funny, I was in LA with my sister, I'd done a few bad films. And we've got this fabulous thing from Britain called Doctor Who, and we're going to do a sort of not quite as good version of it. Would you like to be in it? And then I said, all right, I like playing villains. So I said, yeah, I'll do that then. That fabulous Daphne Ashbrook. Who wouldn't want to be working with that fabulous Daphne Ashbrook? And that fabulous Sylvester McCoy, we all adore. Oh, he's not here either, is he? What's the other character's person? Oh, Paul McGann! Paul McGann, he's not here either. He wasn't invited, so that's all right. And delightful. It was delightful.
So how did you get the mindset of playing a CGI snake monster? How does that work?
It's easy if you can act like me. It's no difficult at all. I just use my imagination, and I become. See, I become the character. I'm a method actor. I chant. I imagine myself as the CGI snake, and
He's a modest man.
Yeah, but I am.
Aaron Roberts unfortunately didn't make it, so we have the wonderful Matthew Waterhouse here. So, start off. You were a fan of the show before you joined.
I was, yes, because I was the right generation, because all of the other actors from Doctor Who in those days, of course, they were already older by the time they were cast in Doctor Who, Mistake was 12 or something it started. Whereas I was the first actor casted who didn't actually grow up with it. So it's by sheer matter of being the right generation. And that fantastic TARDIS set, seeing it when I was 4 or 5. It's still my favourite set. Television image, the interior of the TARDIS is still, it's just a magical thing to a fine. It's actually, the old TARDIS, Tom Baker hated the TARDIS set. It's actually really difficult to act on. Because all you can do is stand around that console and stare at it. You've got the flipping time rotor going up and down. If you're quite short, of course, then every time the time rotor goes up, you can't actually be seen anymore. So it's actually a difficult set to negotiate. So Tom was quite right. In pure acting terms, it's actually not a particularly well-designed set. But just if you're a 5-year-old, you're not thinking about, well, it must be really difficult to act on that set with that time rotor going up and down. So it's just a magical and strange, a really strange set. When you're really young, and I love it. I remember vividly my first day in the studio, and walking around the TARDIS set. The TARDIS set was dark. Tom was recording a scene, rehearsing a scene at some of the other end of the studio, so that another set was lit, and I was just circling the unlit TARDIS by myself. It was just a magical moment, extraordinary moment I never forgot. Just walking around the unlit TARDIS on my very first day in the studio, thinking, cool, it's quite something.
But did any of the pressure get to you coming in as a fan? Did you hear over coming in as a fan? What was that pressure like, meeting him?
Well, Tom is who I adore, is a very difficult man, and he's very honest about this. He's never, in the years since, he's been quite open about it, so it's not sort of scandalous gossip or anything. He was not. It was a bit of a shock to find that Doctor Who had a grumpy streak, to put it politely. That took a bit of adjusting to, because I think Tom did genuinely care. It was his big career thing, and it still is, and he did really care about the program. But he could be very difficult. No two ways about it. But still very exciting.
Now you were introduced in full circle by the wonderful Andrew Smith.
Andrew Smith, who still writes Doctor Who. He writes quite a lot for Big Finish, the audio producers who do a lot of Doctor Who serials as audio dramas. And Andrew's just written one for me, actually. We're recording, I think, later this year, early next year, but I think it's going to be this year.
And what were some of the difficulties working on Full Circle? I know you shot out of order, correct? You shot.
Yes, we shot Stage of Decay and the Vampire Story first. I'm not sure why, actually. I think sometimes it's to do with getting a location, because a lot of Peter's first series was shot out of order, and I think that's to do with availability of location, I think.
Was it perhaps they wanted you more familiar with the character?
No, I don't think they think like that. They don't do it to be nice to actors. It's a much more practical reason. I think to do with perhaps the script wasn't ready, or it's something of that kind. It's nothing to do with, Peter thinks, because Peter's second story, Forward to Doomsday, was the first story he recorded. And I think he was under the impression that he was doing it so that he could work out his Doctor before recording the first story. It's not true. It's because another script fell through. Bidney wrote Castrovalva at the last minute when another Regeneration story didn't work out. But I think Peter believed they were doing it to be nice. That's not true. Not true. No, it's just they never think of actors in that way. They think, oh, it'd be nice to help that poor lad work with his character by doing it out of order. Nobody thinks like that.
So there's a bit of a difference in your relationships with the Fourth Doctor and the Fifth Doctor. There was one student kind of mental way, and there was a bit kind of a tense beginning of the Fifth Doctor. So the tension.
Yes, it's very interesting because we actually did a Big Finish drama about the way companions react to regeneration. And for Adric, it's much more difficult for him than it is for the girl. Partly because he's been around longer and he's much closer to the Fourth Doctor anyway. But because he sneaks into the TARDIS because he adores the First Doctor, the Fifth and the Fourth Doctor, he just adores him. So for him, there's a great sense of loss when the Fourth Doctor dies. It's a really interesting thing. As I say, the story we did called Cyclone actually explores this quite a lot. I think it's a fascinating thing. But for him, yes, it's a difficult regeneration. And it's a real sense of loss. And partly because of that master-pupil relationship they had, so well written by Johnny Byrne in The Keeper of Trial. So yes, you're quite right. It's a much tense relationship, which I think is really interesting. Because essentially the Doctor, I mean, in a sense, the 7 classic Doctors are the same character, in the sense that their dialogue is interchangeable. You know, Sylve is speaking the kind of lines that Tom spoke. You know, the Doctor is essentially a variation on Sherlock Holmes. He's some outer space version of Sherlock Holmes. And even though on the surface they're similar, in fact they're fairly interchangeable. The modern series, they are more different. And Matt Smith's Doctor is a different character from Peter Capaldi's Doctor, in a way that Sylve's Doctor isn't a different character from Tom's. But despite that, it's still, you know, Adric's relationship with the Fifth is a different thing, even though underneath the change he's the same man. In fact, the relationship is quite different.
Now, did you find it was ever a little too crowded in the TARDIS? You went from having Lala and Lisa, then you were by yourself, and then you had Janet and Sarah coming at the same time. Did you ever find it was a little too much?
No, I've never found that a problem at all. I quite like the crowd of TARDIS. And the thing is, it only, you know, in a series with a fairly large cast, not all the characters are going to be as prominent in a particular story as the others. But as long as they're all used interestingly at one time or another. So you can say, obviously, Earthshock's an Adric story. I suppose Black Orchid, you would say, is a Nissa story. Kindred, Tegan and Adric. So as long as the characters are highlighted in one story or another, I don't think it matters if they're less prominent in one than another. And actually quite like. And also characters, you know, characters aren't like Easter Island statues that are just there. Characters are alive in the way they relate to each other. In a sense of the space between characters, where the actual life is. So that when you have this larger group, there are more possibilities. Because even though it's not, you know, the relationship, Doctor Who companions aren't hugely complex characters, but there is a difference in the way Adric relates to Tegan as opposed to the way he relates to Nissa, the way he relates to the Doctor, the way he relates to Romana. They are somewhat different relationships. So when you have more characters, there are more fragments of character because you're relating to more people. So I don't have any problem with you. And of course, the crowded TARDIS happened right at the beginning as well. Some always forgot that, you know, William Hartnell's TARDIS was a four-person crew as well. But as long as the characters are well written and they get their moment in the sun, I think it's fine to have a big cast. But of course, the other thing is that, of course, what we have to remember is the other thing about. Sorry, yeah, I keep not making lots of questions.
No, it's all right. I just want
Is that on the original series, Doctor Who is not about the companion. It's not even about the Doctor. It's about them going in this bizarre spaceship somewhere, leaving the spaceship and encountering something else. And again, the modern series, to my mind, is too much about the Doctor Who girl, and not enough about other people, other planets, other places, and discovering something else. That's what Doctor Who is about. Yeah, so it's not really about the companions. They're just people who go out and have the adventure, encounter something else outside themselves.
Now, in Castle of Alpha, David's first story, a lot of it was inspired by M.C. Escher's
Yes,
drawing.
yes.
How much fun was that working on sets that were inspired like that? It was a lot of...
Oh, it's been very exciting. It's a lovely story, and I love that whole Escher thing. And that set, that web, of course, is the most famous bondage scene in television history. I loved it. I loved that whole Escher thing. I actually had a book of Escher prints myself. He was quite trendy at the time. I think there had been a big exhibit of his work in London sometime in the late 70s. So he was quite trendy at the time. Lots of teenage kids loved that whole Escher thing. It's when you're 15, it's something really. So I did actually know his work and had a little sort of paperback book of most of his prints. So I knew something about it. I just thought it was a great inspiration.
Now, there was a little incident on the location shoot, was there?
Always, yeah.
On screen?
Yes. Well, we were. Yeah. You mean the booze? Yes. Yeah. Well, no. Well, we were on location, and I had a lot to drink the night before. Not my fault. I was with John Nathan Turner, so it wasn't. He was completely open. He was buying me drinks, so it was his fault. Yeah. So the next morning, I felt really, really, really ill, and right towards the end of the story, we're all jogging back to the TARDIS, and Andrew's got out of the web and everything. And I did suddenly think, oh my God, I'm going to throw up. So I ran out to shot and threw up behind a tree. And Peter Davison has never ever stopped talking about it, ever. But my argument for it is that, being a serious method actor, because he's a bit after that time in the web, he's obviously not feeling very well, is he? He wouldn't be feeling very well after 4 episodes in the Master's web. So he's a bit under the weather, so it's method acting. That's my explanation. I felt like really, it's like Dustin Hoffman was always famously doing things like that, wasn't he? Dustin Hoffman, if he had to do a really tired scene in a film, a really exhausted scene, he would stay up all night, so he looked really exhausted. So I was modelling myself on Dustin Hoffman. That's my story anyway, and I'm sticking to it, yes. And it's funny, because Lawrence Olivier was working with Dustin Hoffman in some film, and Hoffman looked absolutely awful. And said, oh my dear boy, you look dreadful. He said, yeah, well, I'm doing this scene where I'm going to look bad, so I stayed up all night. He said, oh, you should try acting. Much easier.
Of course, Tuesday was a fun one, as well, but also you recently revisited doing the Target recently.
Yes, I don't know. I suppose most of you are aware of Classic Who. Most of the serials were adapted into little slim paperback novels. And BBC Audio had this idea about 10 years ago of doing them and bringing them out again as audio versions, read usually by actors from the particular story. And I've done 3 of them. I just love them. I love it. You just sit there in this studio reading this wonderful book, playing all the characters, doing my brilliant version of the 4th Doctor, my fabulous version of Romana, and
I've heard you call them all the definitive version.
Definitive Tegan, yes. It took years to get that good at doing Tegan. But no, I just love them. They're great, and my Davis. It's great fun. I love doing them. It's a really odd thing about Doctor Who. Is Doctor Who companions are really good at impersonating the Doctor. Doctors can never impersonate companions or rubbish at it. I mean, Fraser does a fantastic Patrick. Katie does a fantastic John Pertwee. I can do a little bit of Peter Davis. I do a little bit of Tom. For some reason, companions just seem to have something of the Doctor's personality bleeds into them, so that they can actually almost always do a good impersonation of their Doctor.
Are you more Tom or are you more Peter?
In real life?
Why not?
Well, I'm both, aren't I? I like doing them both. I don't know how to answer that. I didn't really understand the question, to be honest. Am I more Tom or more Peter? I don't know what that means. But
we're just something to bring up.
But I like doing them both. Oh, and I've just done a book of shorts. I've read a book of Doctor Who. There used to be these hardback annuals. Every year there'd be an 80-page annual for children with stories in it, prose stories. And another wheeze is the BBC Audio decided, we can dig out those old annual stories and drag in a few actors to read them. So for the Christmas market this year, they're bringing out this, I think it's 16 stories from the old Doctor Who annuals, starting with one from 1965 annual, the first, and going right up to the last annual, which is 1982. And I've done 4. I've done the Tom and Peter stories for that. And again, it's just wonderful. It's wonderful to do it. I was really surprised. I did think, who's going to want to buy people reading stories from the old Doctor Who annuals? But apparently, they've the pre-orders for them for this box set of 4 CDs. I think it's 4. Is really, really impressive. They're doing really well. And the Doctor Who magazine's writing a huge article about it. So people really want to hear his story.
Well, speaking of prose, you're also a writer yourself. You have 3 novels and you have short stories.
I do, yes. Sugar, my most recent. Thank you. My most recent.
Do you have anything in the process of work? Are you thinking about it?
Not at the moment, no. I've been quite busy this year, but I hope I will write another novel or another set of short stories. I hope it can happen.
So what's your process?
I'm a very pictorial person. I'm very imagistic. When I read books, I see things as I read, and that's what I try and do. The main thing is I try and get a sort of vividity, a pictorial element. For example, in the book about Doctor Who, when I describe the rehearsal room, I want people to be able to see it, to imagine they're standing in that room watching Tom talking about the days of watching the director and all that. That's what I try to do. It usually just starts with an image of some kind. All four of the stories started with an image, a picture in my head. The story spun out of that image. I try and write, an hour a day, an hour and a half. I can't do it all day. I get burnt out after a while because it's very intense. I expect the people here to write, and writing is very intense, very draining. But I suppose that's my process as far as I can take to have one. It's a fascinating thing. And there are a lot of actors write, because acting and writing are oddly, because they're about character, and I'm interested in character. And so even though people might think it's a very different thing, in some ways it's quite closely related.
Have you ever thought about branching into doing like some screenplays or some plays itself?
I haven't. No, I wrote a Dark Shadows for Big Finish called Old Acquaintance. As well as doing Doctor Who audios, Big Finish do quite a few ranges. They do Blake 7, quite a few. But one of the things they do is the old Gothic soap opera Dark Shadows, and I've done quite a few of them. But I wrote one for the actor David Selby to read, and that was fascinating. It's a different thing when you're writing for another person. Because even though my books do exist in audio form, I've always been the voice for them. And in fact, I do work aloud. And again, I think because I'm an actor, so when I write a paragraph, I read it aloud, I hear it. That's really important to me, to actually be able to speak the sentence. It's fascinating, actually, how many people who write for audio don't actually speak their own dialogue. And you can tell. You can absolutely tell as an actor when you think, this guy obviously hasn't actually tried saying it. You really, if you're going to write for actors, you really have to speak the word lines to understand how they're going to feel when the actor starts speaking. So to that extent, I've written a dramatic piece for another actor, and maybe I'll do another one. I don't know. Yeah, I'd like to.
Speaking of Dark Shadows, how did you get involved with Dark Shadows?
Oh, that was quite funny because I wrote a book about Doctor Who, Blue Box Boy, in which I just made a casual remark about having seen this bizarre Gothic soap opera, which was being rerun at about 7 in the morning when I first moved to the States. I saw a couple of episodes. And my other half loved it as a boy, and so I bought volume 1 of the DVD. Kind of as a joke present. I didn't think we would. I thought we'd watch a couple of episodes and giggle at the set wobbling and all that kind of stuff, and then give it away. But I just adored it. The minute I started watching, I thought, oh, this is fantastic. When that vampire comes out of the coffin, I thought, oh God, I've got to. So now I've seen all 1,025 episodes of it, and so I just made it, and it sort of reminds me of Doctor. It's something a bit Doctor Who-y about Dark Shadows. And so I just mentioned it in my book, and at that time I said no to doing Doctor Who for Big Finish. I wasn't into doing it at that time. So one of the Joe Lidster, who runs Dark Shadows range, read it and said, oh, Matthew likes Dark Shadows, maybe because you won't do Doctor Who, you would do a Dark Shadows one. So they got in touch, and they asked me if I would. And I said, yeah. I know some of you may have heard that I'm going over old ground, but because I might have mentioned this the other day. But yeah. They actually wrote to me, again, I think I said this the other day, they wrote, this is exactly a direct quote, they wrote to me and said, dear Matthew, would you like to play a mild-mannered, occult-worshipping serial killer in an episode of Dark Shadows? And I wrote back and said, I've always wanted to play a mild-mannered, occult-worshipping serial killer. And it was great, and the script was so good. We went to LA, I did it in LA with David Selby. Some of the Dark Shadows stuff is recorded in different studios because the cast is so dissipated, but we were able to actually do it together, which was very pleasing. Because I liked that so much, that's what made me decide on what we got to after. So I thought, oh, if they're writing stuff as good as this for Dark Shadows, maybe they're writing really good stuff for Doctor Who. So that's why I started with Doctor Who. So I might not be doing Doctor Who audios even now if it wasn't for Dark Shadows. That's what triggered my interest in working for Big Finish.
How was it like coming back and reuniting new cast? Had you been reunited them previously?
Oh, well, of course, at Convent we all knew each other. We were all seeing each other every so often. So it wasn't difficult at all. It was just, oh, Peter, oh, no, Peter. Oh, hello, Matthew. Is that kind of nothing, no surprise, nothing, none of that. Oh, I haven't seen you in 30 years, because I probably saw him about 6 months earlier. So in that sense, nothing strange about it at all.
But how was the working experience? Was it like exactly the same? I mean, obviously there's differences between filming and doing recording in the studio.
Yeah, it was exactly the same, but it does feel it. Once you're in the company of Janet Fielding, it's always exactly like it always is with Janet Fielding. It's wonderful. quite a sweary girl. But yeah, it was wonderful. It was really the first day we just did it, and it was exactly like doing, in a strange way, exactly like doing the TV version, but just faster. Because we record 2 episodes a day of the audio, so we get through a lot of work. But it's great fun. It's great fun.
So is there anything new you'd like to do, Matrix, in the audio? Any like new storylines or new characteristics you'd like to develop, or something to add to the character?
No, I'm actually, what I feel quite strongly about is that the character has to remain the same. So that anything you add to him must feel, when people are listening, must feel, yes, that's a part of that character. I recognize that as being a part of the character. I don't want them to just glue things on. I want to actually still feel. And as far as possible, I try in performance to get as near as I can to the feel of that character. I want the character to remain the same. So in a sense, I'm not looking for him to develop oddly. I want him to feel like the same character.
Are there any type of stories or situations you like to be able to put the character?
Well, no, I'm open to anything. I mean, if I were to write one, I would think about it. But as far as I'm always interested in what the writer is going to do. I love it. It's always exciting. It was always exciting when the scripts arrived back in 1980 when the script was up on the mat. It was always thrilling to see what the new story would be. And I feel exactly the same way about it with the audio. It's just delightful to actually open these scripts and start reading it, and get out your pen and mark it, and maybe rewrite it a bit. Which they're very nice about. They let me rewrite it. I don't rewrite excessively because that's not fair. But if I have a thought, they're usually pretty open about it. I make suggestions. They're happy to take them. So yes, it's just the excitement of what will the next story be. I find that really exciting.
Well, you seem to have some sort of quasi-historical stories back in your own run with the Visitation and
Yes.
Orchid. What was it like to work on those type of stories where you didn't have to worry about spaceships and jargon? You could just enjoy the type of situation, scenery.
Yes, I enjoyed historical stories. Of course, they're not pure history. They hadn't done pure history since William Hartnell. But I like period settings on Earth. It's fun. The Visitations are wonderful. The idea of the Doctor. People who have watched The Visitation carefully will notice it's the Doctor that knocks over that thing and causes the fire. So basically, the Doctor himself causes the Great Fire of London. But I think what a great idea. That having an Doctor story set in the Great Fire of London. And that's another one of the audio books I've done. Actually, I read The Visitation for the audio, so I'm quite, it's fairly fresh in my mind because I read it 2 or 3 years ago. So, and Black Orchid's a funny old thing, isn't it? It was lovely to make. It's a strange little number. Peter can't stand it. He just thinks Black Orchid's the biggest load of rubbish ever. But I think it really works because you go to this very, exciting. You get this very cerebral story called Kinder, and then into the Great Fire of London, and then this light little Agatha Christie thing. Go into the big sort of set piece of the season, which is Earthshock. So I think that season, Peter's first season, rhythmically really well designed. It's a really well structured year of Doctor Who, and very various the story. The range of the stories is really quite wide.
There's an interesting development in the Visitation. The Doctor losing the sonic screwdriver. Do you think it was a good idea? Do you think he was over-reliant?
Yeah, I think John was quite smart about it. I think John Nathan Turner's view was it was it got too easy for him just to go zap and get out of something. So I think it made sense. I quite admired it. I think it was a bit lazy of Russell T to just sort of bring it back. To be honest. Oh, and one note I do have for the dear people who made the modern series, they seem not to have quite understood, is the sonic screwdriver is a screwdriver. It's not a magic wand. So yes, I think it's not a bad idea at this point. No, I am really quite fond of it. It's cool. I do like the sonic screwdriver. Well, who doesn't? We all like sonic screwdriver, sonic sunglasses now, isn't it? Sonic sunglasses. But yeah, the sonic screwdriver is cool. But it can make for lazy writing.
So what did you first find out about Earthshock? Did you know it was a story that you knew was going to have Cybermen? Is that the first thing you found out about it? Or did you know previously, beforehand?
I certainly knew there was, before I read the script, I think I knew there was Cybermen in it before, yes. Yeah, and I knew that it was going to die. I knew it was my last story because it was a contract renewal. My contract had expired at the end of Black Orchid, so it was a contract renewal for another story. So I didn't know that was my last story.
How did you end up finding out? Were you told? Or?
No, I accidentally found out because Peter had a copy of an early draft of the script he was carrying around, silly boy. And we were sitting upstairs in the coffee shop at the rehearsal studios, and it was sitting on the table, so I just opened it. I wasn't supposed to know for weeks and weeks and weeks, but I just opened this script that he had with him, and so I found out more earlier than I was supposed to.
Did you pretend you didn't know? Or?
I don't remember pretending either way. I don't think so. I don't think I pretended I didn't know.
So do you think it's a fitting end for you?
Well, I think it's just a classic, again, if you know Doctor Who as a series and if you like that kind of thing, it's just a great key moment in the history of Doctor Who. And everybody likes being, if you're going to be in a series, it's lovely to be in really important moment, something that really has some real impact, to use a...
A lot of people at the time definitely do remember the shock of seeing her.
It was a big deal. Well, of course, John Nathan Turner was very, very secretive about it, so nobody knew. Absolutely nobody knew. Now, of course, people know when they buy the DVD, they see the picture of the Cybermen on the box, and they probably know already what happens in it. But in those days, when the Cybermen appeared at the end of the first episode, there were all these millions of viewers who just fell out of their chairs. They had no clue about the Cybermen, and then they had no clue about the ending until it came. And that was a thing of the moment, thing for that particular time, that really worked at that particular time.
Did you enjoy working with the classic monster that you had grown up seeing?
Oh yes, it was very exciting. I was, even though the Daleks are cool, I sort of think working with Cybermen was a bit more exciting because they've been away for so long. They were very famous. Every Doctor Who fan who had ever read, a Doctor Who novel or anything had heard of them, but hardly seen them. They were really a black and white monster. They've done one with Tom, but basically they were from the black and white era. So it's been years and years since they've been used. So it's very exciting when they came back. I do actually think after that they were overused.
Yes.
I think throughout the 80s they came back too often.
That's because Earthshock was such a success.
Well, exactly, that's the reason. But they were never quite as interesting again, I thought.
But the reason you work with them was not like in terms of taking something.
Yes, absolutely, easy, yes. And that David Bank thing with Cyber Leader. It's because you would have thought that Cybermen, of course, are supposed to be emotionless, and David is this sort of booming classical actor. Excellent! So he's the most emotionless monster ever.
But of course, Earthshock was not your last bit involved with Doctor Who.
By no means.
You came right back.
I came right back.
They couldn't keep you away, could they?
No, they couldn't keep you away. Somebody read the script of Time Flies, and oh my God, we have to bring Matthew into this to save it. That's mean. No, that's quite jolly. It's quite jolly fun, isn't it? In the beginning, yeah. Well, for about 10 seconds in the first episode.
How'd you come about to do that? Because
It was John's idea because he didn't want people to read the radio. The BBC had this magazine called Radio Times, which is the listings magazine, and because it comes out a week early, if my name wasn't in the cast list, that might give somebody a clue. So he wanted me in it, so my name would be in the cast list of the episode after the final episode of Earthshock. See, he's always thinking, that man. He's on top of things.
And of course, Cave of Amazon. Now, did you come in specially to film that little bit, or was it just old footage?
Oh no, came in specially. We all did. All of Peter's old companions standing in a row at 10:29 on the last day of the shooting of Cave of Amazon, just recording these lines. It's great. I love Regeneration Scene. Again, and it's a great one. Peter and Colin is. I think I said this yesterday, but Peter and Colin, I just think is the best Regeneration Scene ever. It's just a fantastic one. I really do. So it's very lovely to be a part of something like that. The key moment.
And did you keep up with the show after you left? Did you actually still watch the viewer?
As far as I could, yeah. I mean, I was working at theatre and stuff, so I didn't always get to see it at the time. But as far as I could, I kept up.
Was it ever difficult to watch? Since you had already been on the show and you had your own opinions, definitely.
No, it was not difficult to watch, but it was entirely different. I know, obviously, once you spend 2 years in it, I know everything about the system. I know the way it works. Every single set, I know what they're doing. I know what the camera looks like. I know when a camera moves. It may well be I actually know the guy operating the camera. The crews, they stayed on for many episodes. So it was entirely different in that sense. Before I was a doctor, I was really innocent about it. I didn't know any more about it than anybody else. But having been in it, I always watched it with all that technical knowledge, obviously. So it was a very different experience.
Did it have your enjoyment?
Well, again, I think it's it just makes it different. But I mean, as an actor, once you're a professional actor, once that becomes your life, you watch things differently anyway. I watch everything as an actor. Every time I go to a movie or I go to a play, I watch it the way an actor watches it. I watch it differently. Because anybody who has some kind of specialist knowledge of anything, if you build elevators for a living, you look at an elevator differently from just the people who just go in, press a button, and go up. Anything that you know something about, you experience differently. So any actor will tell you they watch it as an actor. And it's different. And as a writer as well, when I read books, I read as a writer. I actually think about why did he phrase it that way? What's he reaching for? If you read a genius like Henry James, it's absolutely fascinating to see the machinery of his work. And if you write, actually trying to figure out the way an absolute genius makes a story work is absolutely fascinating. I think Henry James, to be honest, is the greatest writer after Jane Austen. The greatest writer of the Victorian era, the greatest writer of that period. Much greater than Dickens, I think. I mean, just devastatingly acute. It was said of James that anybody would be thrilled to be written about him until they got to the last page and they realised he'd seen right through them. And something in that. But it's fascinating that the way his stuff works. Incredibly subtle. I don't know how we got to Henry James.
You're the one who mentioned it.
Yeah, it's my fault, yes.
Well, we can talk all day about it. I love Henry James. Anyway, you said you went into theater right after Doctor Who.
Yes.
What were the roles that you took on? Did you actually try to shoot on the genius type, or did you?
Well, no. I mean, as an actor, unless you're Tom Cruise, you don't really make choices. You just do the work you get asked to do. So I did a wonderful show. I loved doing that. I did like Treasure Island, and I did Shakespeare. I did Shaw, At Lake-Born. I did Neil Simon. Bright Beach Memoirs, which was great. So stuff like that. But I did it because I went and read for it, and they asked me to do it. But I mean, not many actors are getting offered so much work. They're actually sort of choosing. They just say yes or no to a job that might come up.
You've done a fair bit of Shakespeare. Did you notice any particular favorite that you had done in the roles?
I haven't done a huge amount of Shakespeare, but I find it fascinating and challenging. Midsummer's Dream is a magical play, and Hamlet is a great tragedy. I mean, I find them all really interesting.
What do you think?
But I'm not as good a classical actor as someone like William Russell, who spent most of his life doing classical theatre. I think William is primarily a classical actor.
I know we mentioned briefly Rev, the other interview, and he was talking about it the other day about how he worked on that for quite a little while.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Actors of his generation would
trainer.
often find themselves doing 40 or 50 plays a year, which is more than I've done in my entire life. But that's the way it worked. That's you literally joined a rep company and you did a play that ran for a week and you were rehearsing the next play by day. I have to say, I assume the productions would strike us now as absolutely dreadful. I can't assume they could have been very good when you're doing that much. You're churning things out like that. But as an actor training ground, it is absolutely fantastic. And imagine getting into 40 or 50 different plays all in 1 year. It's amazing. Well, yes, exactly.
So what do you think has led to the show's appeal? We're here today at a convention for it so many years later from the beginning, but it's been a good couple of years since your time as well. But what has led to the appeal for it to be so long lasting?
It's interesting. It's very. I think the regeneration idea, the fact that the Doctor himself can be renewed as a character, has given it. Is one of the things. The fact that after 3 or 4 years, the actor can just collapse and turn into somebody else. I think that's part of that device that constantly renews it. And also, the format is so flexible that you can do any kind of all the tropes of science fiction have been used in Doctor Who. Everything. As I was saying on one of my earlier panels, it's essentially a bookish series. It's a literary series. It comes out of books. It comes out of pulp science fiction of the 30s, 40s, 50s. And in a different way, actually, Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows is a series about books in its way. But partly because the BBC was quite a literary institution, So I think that's the reason. I mean, it had its ups and downs audience-wise, but they just kept making it. They would just keep commissioning it until the mid-80s when one of the controllers of BBC One took a dislike to it. For reasons I don't understand, I've never quite understood. Obviously, at that time, it became a very difficult program to work on. It's always difficult to work on something when there's that sort of tension. But you know, it's also Saturday afternoon, 5:30. It's just a great slot for a program. Great. Yeah, it was wedged between a puppet program and a game show. It was just a part of a very, for many, 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 many years, it's very distinctive British BBC Saturday afternoon schedule. The puppet show, Doctor Who, the game show, and usually a big movie of some kind. And so everybody sat in their little houses at 5 o'clock and watching through to 8 o'clock. It became a big part of British life, that BBC Saturday afternoon schedule. Until Peter then, they moved it to weekdays, which I don't think he liked at all. It suddenly moved to Mondays and Wednesdays. It did very well. Peter's stuff got very big audiences, but you sort of think, Doctor Who ought to be on Saturday. It ought to be 5:15 on a Saturday, not 7:30 on Monday and Wednesday.
I know you said you're not quite a big fan of the newer stuff, but if they were to ask you to come back to do any type of role, not necessarily as Adrian or something, would you say yes?
Oh yes, I'm sure I would. I never said I wasn't a big fan of.
Well, I mean, you have some problems with the format.
Well, I do see them as very different. I mean, they are quite different programs. One of the things that it actually is that it is not quite the same thing done in a modern way. It is actually in some ways quite different. I had the interesting thing of finding, I've had to go through a lot of papers about my life the last 4 years or 4 or 5 years, and I found the writer's guide to Doctor Who when I was in it. I don't know why I ended up in it. But this was the writer's guide would have been sent to anybody who wrote in and said, I'd like to try and write a Doctor Who story. They were sent out to anybody, so they're probably those who wrote it. But it's fascinating the things that the writer's guide forbids that they now do on the programme. One of the things that fans always liked the historical stories, and they always wondered why they didn't do them really hard. But actually, the writer's guide says they're open to them. They were quite happy to do historical stories. But their view was that they were the most difficult to do. The most difficult to write. And you really, really, really have to know your stuff. You have to know the era deeply if you're going to do it properly. But one of the things the writer's guide says they won't consider is what they call pitches, which is Doctor Who meets a famous person. Doctor Who and of course now when they do historical, it's always that. It's always Doctor Who meets Van Gogh, or Doctor Who meets Dickens, or Doctor Who meets Shakespeare. That they would never have commissioned that on the original. They absolutely don't do it. They absolutely said, we don't want that kind of pitch. If you're going to do historical, it can't just be Doctor Who meets a well-known person. So that's an example of something in the new series they do that they would never. If you had said that idea, if you had said, I want to write one where Doctor Who meets Van Gogh, it would have gone in the bin. They wouldn't have commissioned it in a million years. So it is in some ways an entirely different series with different emphasis.
You speak of the show's survival being of its change. What do you think of the newest change? The casting of news?
Really interesting. I don't know Jodie Whittaker's work, but I'm sure she'll be great. All the Doctors are great. Every single actor who's done it has been successful in it, and I know she will. What's really the most important thing is not what Jodie does. It's the writing. It's whether the new showrunner can make it. It's up to him to make it work. She'll be fine. And the thing that matters is the writing. That's always the case. In television, what matters is the writing. The acting, that stuff takes care of itself. It's the writing that matters. And so it's up to him. It's a script that the showrunner has to make it work. She's going to be fine.
So, talk a little bit about Sugar. Sugar is your latest.
My book of short stories, yes.
Yes. What led you not to do another novel, but to do it?
Actually, my publisher suggested it to me. He said, some of your novels have sort of bits that are almost like short stories, wedged into them. So why don't you just try a book of independent pieces? So I did. I found it a fascinating process and exciting to do.
And for one of the science fiction, do you have any trepidation about writing science fiction? You didn't want to.
No, when that story came to my head, it made itself to some extent. They all, to some extent, make themselves. I don't want to sound all dreamy and mysterious about it. But once the characters become alive and begin to act, begin to engage in actions, the story sort of forms itself. It does for me. It's fascinating. Short stories are difficult to write. I don't know how good they are, but it was a fascinating process to do.
No, I find it to be very wonderful. Collection of short stories.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be very different and yet also related. This odd thing of a book of short stories isn't a book of short. It's like a record album, which is both one thing and if it's got 12 songs on it, it's 12 things at the same time. It's one thing and 12 things. And I think a book of short stories is like that. It's not just 4 stories shoved between one cover. It has to be both 4 pieces and 1 piece at the same time.
They have to work together.
They have to work together, and even the order. If you change the order around, it would feel like a somewhat different book. So all that kind of stuff you have to consider, and it's fascinating to do.
Do you have any more of that?
Tragically, I don't know. It snapped up. It snapped. The last one was snapped up this morning. I've got a couple of audios of the first novel and the second novel. I think I've got 2 of them left. So you better dash to my signing table. After Fabulous Katie's panel, you've no excuse not to be at my signing table, snapping up those last remaining audios.
Before that, we'd like to see if the audience has any questions. Okay, Governor, right there.
Could you describe the differences of working with Tom and working with Peter?
Vastly different. Dear Tom is a difficult man, as we all know, and stalking about the place and rewriting scripts. And Terence Dix is a very nice man, he's a bloody awful writer. That was my very first day in rehearsal, Tom. So he was quite intense, and of course he was having the affair with Anna Ward as well, which really did make things quite. The Eastmates trilogy wasn't easy, it wasn't a lark. I liked the result of it, but that wasn't easy to do that. But when Blada left, it got a bit more relaxed. But Tom is never going to be anybody's idea of an easy person. Whereas Peter's quite the opposite. He's a professional actor who turns up, is completely on top of it, does it. It's all very relaxed. It couldn't really be more different. With Peter, it's very, very, very relaxed. And with Tom, it's not. But it can be great because when he's in a good mood, Tom's a very funny man. He's really great to be around. But when he's in a dark frame of mind, it's not easy.
Hello. What is your least favorite and your favorite changes to the series from when you were on and now?
I don't like that the TARDIS works. The whole point of the TARDIS, the reason he lands on all these dreadful planets is you can't control it. I keep wondering, why does he keep going to all these horrendous places when he doesn't have to? That's slightly, the TARDIS doesn't work. So that annoys me a bit. And controversially, now this is just a matter of taste, I actually find it a bit sentimental. I wish it was a bit less gooey. The old programme was never gooey. We did 28 years without being sugary and gooey all the time. And I find they fall into that gooiness just far too easily, where we're all supposed to be blubbing away and terribly moved by it. But we're not. We're just sitting there and thinking, oh, bring in a monster. So I don't like that gooiness. I have to say, though, I do think Russell T Davies is an incredible man. I think he's an incredible master of television. I genuinely do. And his revival, reviving Doctor Who now sounds kind of obvious. It was actually quite risky. It wasn't an obvious thing to do 10 years ago. And whether I am personally fonder of the original, but he's done so much to revitalise it, to find a new audience for it. And to be absolutely honest, as actors, we old hands from the original series have all done really well out of the new one. So none of us should complain about it.
All right, the gentleman in the back of the cap.
Peter Davison was still giving the line that they had to lose Adric last year because the TARDIS was getting too crowded, which I think is bunk anyway. They just wanted to change characters, which is fine. But the season you were on with Peter, by far, that was the best use of all the characters and the companions all teamed up. The next year when you were gone, well, they kind of lost Nissa. You know, I mean, she was like, went 2 or 3 episodes doing nothing. It was based on Tegan's return. Then Mark Strickland came on board, and then Sarah has a show, and then she's gone. She stays. And so I think that was just a bunch of lies they were telling.
Yeah, it's interesting because characters, I was saying earlier, characters are alive in the way they relate to other characters. So when you lose a character, I don't mean this in a self-serving way at all, so don't misunderstand me. I think objectively, Tegan and Nissa are less interesting when Adric's not there, because it's a loss of a relationship. You know, characters aren't by themselves. Characters are alive in the way they look at other people, in the way they talk to other people. And even though these relationships aren't unbelievably complex, they are nuanced enough that they're a bit different. Adric's relationship with Tegan is a different thing from his relationship with Nissa. So that's why, I have no problem with the crowded TARDIS. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I do think John Nathan Turner handled character on Doctor Who very well, I think. Particularly in Peter's first year, I do think it's stuff that really works. It's quite cleverly done. So yes, I agree that 3 companions is absolutely fine. And they all get different things to do. They don't have to be prominent in every story. As long as they're prominent in some, they all get their own. Look at the cast of Star Trek. There's about 8 or 9 regular actors. Sometimes, you've got Lieutenant Uhura just sitting at her telephone console. But sometimes she gets a story, sort of like that. As long as the characters get illuminated at some time, they don't have to be prominent in all stories.
It's interesting you say that about the relationship with Nissa and Tegan, because in the audios they really do try to work in how that affected his passing on them, and it really is quite an interesting arc in terms of the story. You were there, Jim, in front.
Robert Dick from London wants to know which Doctor Who stories you weren't involved in are your favorite?
Oh, they're all so fabulous. It's very difficult to know where to begin, isn't it? I love Spearhead from Space, John Pertwee's first one. I think the Autons are one of the great scary ideas in Doctor Who. I just think it's the idea that a shop window dummy will suddenly sort of smash a pane of glass and step out into the street. I think it's great. I think it's still a great gothic horror type of idea. So I've always loved that one. And I love Patrick's last one, the War Games. That final episode is really, really amazing, I think, and unforgettable. The trouble is what one finds with this when one thinks of all the stories one likes most, you suddenly realise they're nearly all Robert Holmes stories. There's no question that even though a lot of writers are fan, Robert Holmes just had a particular gift for that kind of fiction. He just had some magical touch with it. So, when we talk about the Caves of Agrazani or the Talons of Weng Chiang, Spearhead, the Carnival of Monsters, Robert's stuff just does tend to be really outstanding. And when you talk casually to people who don't know anything about Doctor Who, often the ones they remember happen to be Robert Holmes ones. It's quite common. So there are a few. But I can honestly say, without being silly about it, I've never seen an episode of Classic Who I haven't enjoyed. I've always, when I have the opportunity to see it or when I have a professional reason to watch one, I still find them genuinely pleasurable. I find them interesting. I think they're fun. They're highly inventive. I love cliffhangers. I'm a sucker for melodrama, shrieky melodrama, and then the music coming in. I'm a sucker for all that. I love it. So I do find the original series, when I see it, I've always found it very pleasurable to watch.
And Robert Dick, always invading everything.
Oh, yes.
Any other questions? Yes, there is. I'm in the back of the beard.
Of all the things you've ever been active, what was the one you were the least happy with the final outcome of the product?
If anything I've done as an actor?
Yeah, anything.
I was in a dreadful production of Peter Pan. It sounded great. It sounded like a lovely job, and it was absolutely appalling. I just couldn't wait for it to finish. That was dreadful. I don't know. Thank you for bringing it back into my dreadful. But then the great thing was, immediately after that, I was cast in Brighton Beach Memoirs, which was one of my favourite jobs. One of the very favourite things came almost instantly after Peter Pan.
Of all the Doctor Who actors that you were involved with during your time as actor, which
say was their character was most like them in real life?
Ah, there we are. That's a question. Well, Tegan is known as the mouth on legs, and Janet does have that quality. Janet is a wonderful woman, but she's very much a mouth on legs. I don't think she'd be flattered if I said she was like Tegan, but I think there are quite a lot of elements of Tegan in her. But Nyssa actually, because Sarah does have this great sweetness that Nyssa has. That's a real part of Sarah. So both of them. Actually, in some ways, I think Sarah. Again, would Sarah be pleased if I said she's quite like this? I think she would. I think she'd be pleased, wouldn't she? Yeah, and Nyss is a very nice girl. I don't think she'd object to it. Yeah, so perhaps say Sarah is the one closest to the character she played.
You know that.
I just want to make a statement saying thank you to like you and Tom for making my childhood wonderful. You formed it in my imagination. There would be moments where Tom would just look through the TV screen and say, even my sonny screwdriver would work on this. And I would just, when I jump off my living room floor, go, what can I do, Doctor? Help, And then when you came along, it's like, there was a friend that I could be with. And I think you've already answered the question I have is, which doctor would you have been able to want to work with? That you did
all of them. I'd love to work with all of them. I'd love to work with Patrick. Of course, I have worked with Sylvester. I did a big finish with Sylv, which was really great fun. But I'm happy to work with any of them. I'm available. I'm available to work with any of them who want me. But Patrick is was unfortunately just a stunningly good actor. And he is always when people ask actors who their favourite Doctor is, almost everybody says Patrick, because he was just such a stunningly good actor.
You've mentioned a lot about Tom and Peter and Sarah and Janet. You also spent a fair amount of time on screen across from Anthony Hamlin's Master. What was working with him like? Because it seems like he was fairly into the role also.
He was lovely. He was a very elegant. He's a great master. He was very elegant, and in some ways he was an old-fashioned actor because he would always come into rehearsal having already learned the lines, which is actually not the normal way to do it anymore. Because the idea is that the danger once you learn the lines is it's difficult to change. Once it's in your head, it's difficult to change your line reading or to rethink it. But he was a sort of like an actor of his generation. He was very professional. He turned up knowing everything, which means he couldn't stand it when Tom rewrote everything, because then he has to unlearn. Which unlearning lines is virtually impossible to do once you've actually got it in your head. And try, oh no, I'm not saying that line anymore, or I'm saying it rewritten. I'm saying it with a joke at the end. So he never warmed to Tom's rewrite at all. But he was always lovely, a very elegant guy, and lovely to us, and really enjoyed it, of course. Tony didn't like to work too much. He was obsessed with cricket. So he loved spending all summer playing cricket. So having a character who just played occasionally suited him perfectly. Just coming in, doing a couple of Doctor Who's a year, and then going off and playing cricket. That was his dream life. He was a lovely man.
I got time for one more question. Anyone?
What was your favorite monster that you worked with?
My favourite monster I worked with?
Hello, Janet.
Oh, Tom Baker, yes. Well, I love the Keeper of Troughton. I love that burnt up master played by, I suppose, does he count as a monster? I suppose he does. I love that the master in the Melchior TARDIS statue. I absolutely think actor called Geoffrey Beavers, again, a wonderful actor. I see him occasionally. He's still around Doctor Who, he does his finish and stuff. But I think he was married to Caroline John, by the way, who was John Pertwee's first companion. So perhaps he was my favourite, I think. That's certainly one of them anyway, I would say.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you all for coming in.
You maybe want to go back and watch them now again.
I just wanted to make a quick announcement about the Eric Robert photo ops. If you had Eric Robert photo ops, if you want to go out and talk to the photo people and get your exchanges, if you want to exchange for a photo with William, Eddy, or Matthew, just go talk to them. Thank you.
Well, it was really kind of a star. Yeah, I did it. Star. It's sharp. I stabbed myself with these shots. That's why I put out like this. Well, I had it on my scar.
Alright, there we go. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, you use the airport thing?
No, I didn't use it.
Oh.
That was a long journey for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's something where you could have had that branding or something like that last night.
I've never been there.
You want to go back and see it? It is. Oh, that's
Yes. It's hard to get the basic spot in between.
Hi. Love your dress. Thank you. It started life as a t-shirt. And, you know, and I did stuff to it. This girl will come running in and give her a look. On time? That's a miracle. I know, everybody. Well, listen, I mean, you know, what can I say? Matthew, I like to follow, but I'm here. Please applaud your butts off for this woman, please.
on a chair for more than 30 seconds. I mean, my children actually say to me, quick, get the camera out, Mommy's sitting down. It's a rare occurrence in our house. Do you know what? I know this is weird, Hello, darling, aren't you gorgeous? She's truly making this. This is an original outbound. I mean, my mother was a sweetie darling. And so, and it's lovely, you go through airports and there's these big burly policemen. I'm going to use you here. And you go up, and of course with American policemen, because they're very, very butch. Don't come near me because I am a policeman. And I go up and I go, excuse me, sweetie darling, I wonder if you could, and you can sit there going, ma'am, I don't quite know what to do about it. It kind of breaks down your facade when somebody comes up. Like the lovely man who took my fingerprints, actually gave me a hug. Now, I don't think they do that very often. So it just shows you, it can sort of break down. I was just thinking, I don't know, I'm a little bit wacky at the moment. Not that you will have noticed, right? Because with all the medication and the fact that I'm really trying so hard to keep my energy, right now I'd like to be lying down, but that's not going to happen. Because you've all been so lovely. I cannot tell you. I mean, I'm sorry that Mr. Roberts couldn't make it. But Matthew and myself and Mr. Russell have endeavored to make sure that this wonderful convention, which has been, it's like being in just like in somebody's big family house, really, isn't it? And you have all made me feel so welcome. And I don't think, because I'm truthfully telling you, I don't think I could feel this unwell if I wasn't surrounded by such fantastic people that you make me feel so much better. Thank you. There's other stuff for me to spill here.
You put this somewhere safe. Should I guard?
Yeah, safe.
Here.
Now, where should we put you?
Anywhere you like. I'm roving.
Up to yesterday when you saw me throwing things around.
I can move too. It's cool.
But I don't know why. Can I just tell you a really weird story? I'm talking to my gorgeous little niece here, who's actually my niece twice removed. And I said, if she doesn't get it right, it'll be 3 times. And then she gets the red card. Anyway, so that's been an added bonus because, of course, I have family in Kansas. So it's been a joy to hang out with them as well. She's beginning to regret it now, Oh my God, does this gene run in the family? But anyway, we were outside and suddenly I got this, there were these 2 little, you call them bugs here, I call them insects. And I have never killed anything in my life, ever. I've never sprayed anything, I've never, well, not, intending to. I mean, when I open a bottle of fizzy stuff and then, it's something I cannot do. I even apologize when I'm walking across the grass and I'm thinking of all those little ants underneath, all trying to live their little lives, and suddenly boom, boom, It's scary stuff if you're an ant. And that's called empathy. If you imagine that you're something that's feeling that, Anyway, so when I was living with my girlfriend, and my darling friend who I went to school with from the age of 12, I won't say much more than her name is Liza. And we were living together over many years because we've known each other since we were 12. In fact, it was through her my children got christened because she said to me, Manning, you're having a christening for the twins? I said, no, don't you take them to the library and have them stacked? She said, no, Manning, I think you have this wrong. You have like a party. So we did, 12 godparents. Anyway, so when I was living here, and she said, nobody has ever asked me to ask flies to kindly leave my apartment. She said, I'm a changed woman. I'm going, excuse me, Mr. Fly, but could you just leave? Because if I spray you, Manning will come in and kill me. So anyway, And with the children, you know, if there are a lot of cockroaches in Australia, like there is in New York and things, and some of them, you know, the size of mice.
I'm frightening, yes.
I'm so glad that you're interviewing me. I'm not going to stop. Anyway, I'm frightened if I stopped, I'll never start again.
I feel that. It's okay.
And can you imagine when I woke up this morning, was getting ready to come down here this morning, and I went to the door, and look at what I saw at my door. Now this is a woman who feels like she may not live much longer. And I thought, well, if the Grim Reaper is right behind him, so I did take my pulse, and I'm still here. So he was just there to make sure that I was, you know, looked after in case. Anyway, gave me quite a turn though, darling. I can tell you at my age, see a bitter outside my door. Anyway, so, Liza, sorry, I'm just...
Do you reckon that heaven looks like a Doctor Who convention? You know? How far off would you have been, really?
Would heaven look... I don't know, but the world would be a better place if it was a Doctor Who convention. You know what I mean? Because we know people do it for each other, don't they? You know, you look at all the crises that are going on. I will get back to the story, I promise you. You look at all the crises that's going on in the world right now, and you look at who is it that always comes to the rescue to help each other through the dreadful things that are happening, you know, whether they're natural disasters or man-made. You know, the people are there for the people. And I think we need to remember that when we look into these ridiculous people called politicians and asking them for help, because they ain't going to be there. Anyway, so back to my story. Cockroaches. Well, you know, that's an easy.
That's a good segue, yeah.
Oh, there we go. I coughed and I hope that wasn't what came out. Do you need that? At least it's recyclable. I don't know why I did that. It's really childish, isn't it? I think you better take me back to the Wesley Center from whence I came yesterday. Anyway, so Liza, you know, with the children, if there was a cockroach, and all their school friends come and say, oh, there's a cockroach. And my children say, don't kill it, Mummy will be very cross with you if you kill it and cockroach. Right? What you have to do, you have to go and you have to... I'm turning into the child now, just in case you wonder what's happening. You've got to go and get a posting card and a glass, and you put the glass over the cockroach, and then put a card underneath, and then you take it out of the door, and you put it outside. And then the cockroach can go somewhere else. So, you know, that's what my children grew up with. So, anyway, this went on. Years later, the children... Sorry, I'm breathing now. Sorry. And anyway, so the children were with us doing a special tour of Universal with Liza, right? So it was a great thing. We went on all these different things, and it was one of those great tours where you don't have to queue or do anything, because having that particular lady in the front of the queue, hello.
Yeah. All that you know.
Yeah, exactly. So there we are, we're doing this wonderful tour, and then we went on this thing, which was like the New York subway, and you go on this thing, and suddenly the New York subway tram lines open up, and out comes, right in front of this train that you're riding on, King Kong. Rah! You know, and the kids are going, woo, mommy, mommy. And Liza said, get a glass. And I don't know what made me, but I was outside and I suddenly just remembered this wonderful story. That's outstanding. So that's the line now, get a glass.
That is outstanding.
That doesn't apply when you see me crawling along the corridor later. Yeah, with the vicar. Darling, the young ones, what a wonderful show.
I always feel like this is the place to wear this.
Yeah.
Because if anyone's going to appreciate the young ones, it's everyone in here is with us on this.
The thing I said when I saw you, I said, I like you because you have my humor immediately.
I put it back on.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Well, I'll try and be interviewed now.
Well, I have to ask. Nicola Bryant gave me a story about Alexi Sale. Gave me an amazing story about Alexi Sale. Do you have a story about one of these guys?
No, I don't actually, because the thing was, I was living in Australia, and so at that time, I have stories about plenty of other people, but but the thing is, the only connection I have on that level is that there's a channel in Australia called UKTV, and I used to do all the coming up next on UKTV, and then I do all that, and then I got upgraded, and so I used to do all, I do the Alexi Sale thing, I do the whole Liverpoolian accent, Peter, like that, and I come on and I'd be, starting them out, bonkers Alexi Sale, and do all that, right? And then I then got my own chat show out of it.
Oh my goodness.
So I interviewed Simon Pegg, Edgar Wright, who else would you know that I interviewed? Well, that show, John Fowlman, who was head of Light Entertainment, he got AdFab on, the young ones on, who he was a groundbreaking producer for comedy. Except I'm interviewed, well, that's what I was doing. And I think, oh my God, I love this man, he's so brilliant, and I'm interviewing him, how exciting this is going to be. And I'm sitting here and I'm talking to him saying, the groundbreaking shows that without you, we wouldn't have had this wonderful comedy instead of all those, I hate to say it, but I just loathe the Benny Hill type stuff, it's just like that doesn't make me laugh, I'm sorry. And there was a lot of that kind of English comedy on the buses, and I hated it. I like sick, twisted, wacky humor. Finally, I was catered for. Thank you, John Fowlman. Anyway, so I'm interviewing him, right? And suddenly he looked at me and he said, "You don't remember me, do you?" Now, that's a real hard thing in the middle of an interview. And I'm it's easy to do. And he said to me, "I directed you in the Peter Pan Man."
Oh no.
I thought that's the end of my career, isn't it? I am just the man who brings us the best comedy on British television, and I've just denied him. And he said to me, and I said, "The Peter Man," I said, "So you were the guy that made me put my legs round this man's waist." I was playing Peter Pan and all the Dark Boys. It was all about J.M. Barrie.
Okay.
So I was playing all the boys, including Peter. And at one point they had me, this director thought it was a really good idea for me to be swung round on his whilst reciting speeches of Ariel's in The Tempest. I mean, what? No wonder I'd forgotten him.
Oh my God.
I mean, because, the blood's rushing to your head and you're trying to do, the bowsprit as a boy. And then I had to do things, and then I had to play them as the man, up to my neck in mud and bullets, father. It was bonkers, and I thought, no wonder I forgot you. I think.
Oh my God.
So I don't have, but I do have a story about the producer. So there you are.
There it is. There it is. It's one of my favorite things when I watch classic Doctor Who. To play spot the young ones cast member and spot the I Claudius veteran. Yeah. Because they're everywhere, and it's wonderful, and it makes me so happy. Who's got questions for this gorgeous woman? You're gonna have to sing out because we don't have a microphone.
No, I'll come to you, darling.
Or that.
Yes, my sweet. Well, no, the only thing I can say about, when I say no, the only thing I can say about Matt Smith is when it was asked of him what it was like working with me, he said, "She's as mad as a box of frogs." And I looked at Matt Smith and I said, "I can't seriously believe after having just worked with you that you could say that. He's divinely bonkers. He's as mad as a cut snake. grateful because he's so physical. And he's a delight. And I looked him at one point when we were running across this usual terrain that one has to run across.
Right.
And the only thing is I was way past the miniskirts, thank goodness, and way past the little thin boots that people used to have to pour hot water around my feet to get them out of the ice.
Oh my God.
So I could carry on running and acting. Oh yeah. Oh, they didn't care back then, darling. They look after them now. You know, oh, she'll be all right, put a bit of hot water around when she gets And there's John and the brig, they've all got the long johns on and, you know, they've got the thermal thing. I'm like blue. You know, oh, come on, pull yourself together, girl. No, I spent a lot of time under John's cape, let me tell you. But you can imagine really thin suede boots in the snow and ice. And then, you know, and another time they had me, when I was doing the trashing thing, they said to me, oh, just stay here, because you had to think I was sinking into this real bog. In England, bog is a slang term for toilet. So when I say it, it sounds a little weird. Mind you, the toilet in there flushes of its own accord. It taps you.
Yeah.
And I said to my niece, I said, how does it know when my bottom's up? And so I turned round to flush it, and it flushed in my face. So I've come to Wichita to be insulted by a toilet, where I think I just washed my career. But anyway, so they said, now, so they put these wooden things there, and they said, right, you go then, because they take my glasses away. So there I am, in a complete, like, I can see nothing, and I'm there, and I felt like I was there for a very, very, very long time, and I was sort of saying, hello, because what was happening, I was slowly doing, and this mud, I don't know, not many of you would have sat in a muddy bog, would you? Well, let me tell you, it is the weirdest feeling because the bubbles all kind of go between your. It's weird, plenty weird. And so slowly, I'm sinking into this mud. And I started and it was only up to there. And it's like here by now. And I'm going, hello? Is anybody there? Nothing. You know, and then finally I just got to about here, and I was thinking, well, this is it really, isn't it? and it was the other crew, and they came back and they said, oh my God, Katie, we were so sorry. We just they'd gone off to get this thing that I needed, and we stopped to get some bird sounds. They actually pulled me out of this mud. I looked like the creature from the Black Lagoon. Everybody thought it was oh how jolly and how funny that was. And I'm just like this. You know, I said, you don't need drashings. I can do both roles now. I mean, that's how we were treated.
Bird sounds?
I know. Bird sounds. You know.
They could have been honest and been like, we're sorry, Katie, we stopped for a beer.
Yeah. You didn't get
me wrong. Yeah.
Bird sounds, there were bird sounds going on here. I think, hello.
God.
And we didn't have mobile phones in our pockets back then.
It would have been broken anyway. It would have been stuck down the mud.
You know, oh, so many. And the other one was, which I often tell, I'm doing Doctor Who for you now. I'm quite good. I do disappear out a bit periodically. And then I'll answer another question. But I remember once, we did all our own stunts. There was only one they wouldn't let me do. But all the others we did. And the stuntman said to me, oh, Katie, can you abseil? And I went, oh, yes. Right. Well, because I can't drive a car. I can't see. I've got no periphery. They won't let me drive. Very sensible. Can you imagine me driving? I mean, really. You know, somebody on half a bottle of Southern Comfort would do better than I would.
Florida, you moved to Miami, you fit right in with some of the driving I've seen there.
Well, I don't know whether they're coming towards me or away, because at night everything just blurs into one big beautiful blob, you know. Awesome. Anyway, including my had children. Anyway, that's another story. I've got one there as well.
2 years of therapy, right there. Right there.
Yes. Well, yes, if you tried to take the wrong children home from school too, I think you must. Quite frankly, I wish I had. Anyway, I don't mean that. I'm so sorry. I'm very naughty. You do know that, don't you? Sometimes I'm sure people take me terribly seriously, and you think, oh, please don't, because I'm just naughty. Anyway, so I said, of course I can abstain. And, darling, do you think this might puffer in one of those bags? This will help me tell the story. Anyway, oh, I got it. Oh, you got it. You got it. Sorry. Okay. Just a slight stolen. Anyway, it's a stolen puffer.
Bigger on the inside.
Oh, it is.
It's like Tom Baker's.
And this is, everyone says to me, well, you don't look like you've been ill. That's because my bag says this bag contains my face. And I did. I had to put it on this morning, otherwise you would see what I really look like. Anyway. Yeah, exactly. So, that morning, John always used to get me up in the morning and stuff, and he'd always say to everybody, no, I'll take care of it in the morning, because I wasn't very good in the morning then. You know, I hadn't had children, and, you know, so he'd come up and he'd say, oh, you know, come on, darling, we'll take me downstairs and he'd feed me little pieces of toast. Oh, my goodness. Oh, he was so sweet. And then he'd drive me to where we were going. And then he would always look after my glasses and make sure he was on. And he said, oh, it's marvellous you're doing the abseiling, darling. I really, you know, he had to wait at the bottom for me. I did the abseiling. He just did the waiting at the bottom. Anyway, so we're standing there, and I suddenly said to him, where's the water? And he said to me, what water have you in mind? And I said, well, the water that I'm abseiling on. No. And you could see the stunt boys looking, and they said, because I thought, you know, you don't need to see to steer a boat on water, do you? Because there's not likely to be anybody else there, isn't there? You know, and so they said, no, it's bouncing down the side of a mountain on a bit of rope, which wasn't what I had in mind, but I did it. And I bounced down the side of this mountain, and you know, because I wasn't a professional, they showed me roughly what to do. So bounce in, bounce out, and I held on to this bit of rope. I gripped, as soon as they put these special gloves on. And I got to, and John was so nervous, he called me by the name of Katie. I had to go all the way up and do it again. Oh, God. So now I know I can abseil.
And you know what it is.
I know what it is. You know.
All the time while she has tea.
You're leading this. Why am I leading this? Because I'm so fussy.
Well, she started us off in a direction, you know, talking about Matt Smith. I wanted to ask you things about. It went fine.
It went up that way.
That's supposed to happen?
No. Oh dear. I think I was breathing out instead of in.
Okay, let's try this again.
Now, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, a simple lesson.
Do I have to be like John Pertwee here and hold it for you?
Right, now breathe in. That'll do it.
Yes?
Right.
Okay.
Good. Let's go.
All right, she's with us now. And it's not falling apart.
Do you know, I tell you, yesterday, the only character I could have played yesterday was Iris. But please don't anybody ever tell me what I did. Can I have a solemn bow in front of the man of the cloth over there, right? That everything I did yesterday will stay in Wichita in this room. Yes. Yes. Thank you. I love you.
She'll never speak of it.
No, never speak of it again.
What? No blackmail material at all.
You are wonderful. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine you and I on an evening out together? It wouldn't be good.
I think it would be awesome. I'm buying. Okay, I'm buying. I think that would be outstanding.
If only I drank, as I say. That I always tell the story of when I was in America. I'd done a talk on stage and they came up, and this girl said to me, "Oh, she did, you must have had a drink before you went on stage." I said, "I don't drink." She said, "Oh, come on, you can't do what you just did sober." And that made me think about myself a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, questions.
Way more healthy and way more economical when you think about it.
I'm a cheap date.
You know?
I don't eat meat, I don't eat fish, I don't drink.
So I'll take you out for Italian pizza.
So, you know, I'm good.
So I'm buying the cannoli.
The cannoli I'm in.
There it is.
I love cannoli.
There it is.
We got it.
When you're in New York, there it is.
That's it.
Can we use that as a
Well, I lived in
segue?
New York. That's why the cannoli.
Well, where else do you go? I mean, apart from Italy, okay. But,
Yeah, no.
But
Italy is in New York.
Yeah, it is downtown.
It really is.
It is downtown.
Anybody want to ask any questions? Oh, sorry, darling. You gotta make it big with me.
I've got a question. So, I asked the same question.
Oh, yeah, that's all right.
Just the balance goes because of the ego.
There's a chair right here, huh?
I asked the same question, Matt. I'll ask it you. Of the Doctor Who actors you were involved with during the time you were on the show, which one had the character that was most like them in real life?
I've been involved with rather a lot. You know, because I did the 3 Doctors, and so I've had a lot of, and I've done a lot of audios with actually.
Well, let's narrow it down to the TV show and the classic.
Okay, so we're talking. So you're looking at the Brig and John Levine and Roger. Well, Roger completely opposite. Roger was a pussycat. Roger was a man who didn't want to do any of his stage fights. He didn't want to hold a sword. No. Roger was the sweetest, most gentlest man of all time. I know, darling, I know. I feel just like you do right now. I'm very happy to babysit. And that baby is fine, isn't it? I'm sorry. The one convention I went to, they said, if you ever want to get to talk to Katie, just get a dog or a child.
Yep.
We call it pig bait. I would have to say the wonderful thing about Nick Courtney and the fact that we all know him as the Brig, I think that speaks for itself. Because that warmth, and I know, he played the character of the Brig, but he took that character of the Brig right to the end. I mean, we all know him and love him as the Brig, and we know he's Nicholas Courtney. But you and know at a convention, everybody knew him as the Brig. And that was his name. He called himself the Brig. So I think when an actor calls themselves their character, I think that says very much that extraordinary man who loved a pint was Nick. There was very little, and yet he was a marvelous actor. I'm not, you hear a lot of the other things he's done on the radio, but he really did adopt that character, and he took it right to the very end with him. He said, "Come along, KM, come and sit on the Brig's knee," it's all. So that was very much one. I think John Levine too was very much. He had that very charming, cheeky, chappy sort of thing. And I think to a certain extent, wonderful actor again, than Richard Franklin, but I know Richard very, very well, as I know them all very well. We still, those of us who are left, still hang out together. But I think he had also been to Sandhurst, which is where, so he'd been an army boy. And there was, talking to him now is very much like I'm talking to Mike Yates, strangely enough, So it's characters that have brought something to it very strongly themselves. And he's also keeps very strongly the identity of being Mike Yates, So I think those, and I won't say Joe. Everybody likes to think that Joe was very much a creation. I even had to change my voice for Joe. But there obviously you bring bits of you into a character to help it breathe. And my natural clumsiness became very much, you know, they'd say, oh, Katie's fallen again. Oh, just leave it in shot. I just wondered if the rings were yours. The rings were mine.
Okay.
Do you know why I wore the rings? I wore the rings. John gave me quite a few of them, that my thumb rings were from John. It was because John worked it out, because I was a bit of a nail biter, that if my hands were so heavy, I couldn't get them to my mouth.
Oh, dear.
All of Joe's rings were, so he made them, because I wore them when I auditioned. But then he just kept adding because he could see this was getting harder and harder for me to bite my nails. So it was a rather lovely way of stopping someone from biting their nails.
In my head canon, it was in case she needed to punch somebody because they got fresh with her.
Joe didn't. No, she wasn't a puncher. She was a dater. But there was one time when I had to do the one thing that Joe could do. Yeah, we always said that with Sophie Aldred. We always said that Ace would have beaten them to death with a bat, or Joe would have hugged them to death and helped them through life.
Yeah.
She was very much that kind of a woman. Although when Joe wanted to go, she did. I mean, there was one thing we did in the prison, the Mind of Evil. Boy, Joe took on a whole male prison there. She's karate, kicking, and flinging a gun around. She could do it when she had to.
One of my favorite Joe moments was in The Curse of Peladon, when somebody makes a comment about when you guys just got there, when you first arrived, and you're not supposed to be there, and somebody says something about, well, you know, only members of the royal family are blah, 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 and without missing a beat, Joe's immediately, I am not accustomed to being left standing here waiting this long. And the doctor, who was like, yes, Princess Josephine. I was like, you get it, girl. Yeah, because he was clueless.
No, Joe was actually very good. She used to do it to the master a lot, of like doing, because one time I think she'd done it 1 or 2 times. She was very good at creating little dramas and things. And he said, you know, thank you, Miss Grant, we'll let you know. But, you know, it was also lovely because Joe, actually, my favourite moment is when the master comes in at one point, and the doctor and Joe are having, and she just turns around and she goes, oh, shush! So that was what was so cute about her. She had all those things, and you watched her grow up.
Yeah.
And you don't often, in things like, especially sci-fi, get to see people, one loathes to use the word journey. But you know, so shoot me now.
If it fits.
But you know, you saw her start as like a 19-year-old. Yeah, we know they like to say that she'd done all this stuff, but you know, she hadn't done anything at unit training. She could do escapology. And one time, I had to get John out. We were tied up, and I'm untying him. And of course, I just stuck all my false nails on, right? Which is another way. And of course, when the camera looked down, they said we may have to go again, which you didn't do very much in my day. It was like get it in one, or you know. Because all my nails had stuck to his velvet jacket. Which was, you know, wonderful. But yeah, and wasn't it wonderful working too with, you know, who knew, with David Troughton, of course.
Yeah.
You know, who was just lovely. But Jo also had a lovely time. She had several, I think it was the Planet of the Daleks or something, but she had another little almost moment when he wanted to, you know, her to stay with the young boy. It was quite cute.
He was.
But I met his girlfriend in real life. Oh, she was quite something. Very lovely girl.
Well,
I can say.
Well, where Jo ended up, I mean, I thought he was adorable.
Oh, and he's still my best friend. Do you know, can I tell you something sweet?
Yes.
Tell me when I'm babbling, because I have no idea what's coming out of my mouth. I just go.
You go, girl.
You know, I'm like one of those toys you buy. As my partner once said to me, it's like having your own radio, but there's no off button. Anyway, what was I going to say? Where was
About
I?
the cute boy.
Oh, yeah.
The cute boy that you married.
The cute boy that I married, right, Stuart Hearn. And still my, you know, we were engaged in real life. I've engaged a lot, darling. I just never got married, other than on Wikipedia, where I've been married about 22 times. I met one of my so-called husbands the other day, and he said, you know, I hadn't seen him for years and years. He was Rocky Horror. And he said to me, he said, do you know we've never been divorced because the newspapers married us? You know, it happened back then, you know. Anyway, Stuart and I were engaged, and he laughs, he says to his girls now, he said, well, you know, Katie and I were the posh and vets of our day. We were in the newspapers every day, you know, because it was back then, everything you did. But it wasn't quite so in your face because it wasn't on the, we didn't have all the social media and stuff. Anyway, and it was so funny, we were watching Russell T. Davies did a Shakespeare thing on television, whether you've had it out here. Anybody had it out here? Have you seen the Russell T. Davies Shakespeare Midsummer Night's Dream here? No, well, darlings, don't miss it. Okay, it's absolutely wonderful. And I was in Stuart's cottage. He's got this little cottage, so it's just everything you would imagine this character to have had. And the dogs, and you know, there's nothing there, just a Norman church, and then all these fields, and we go off and we pick blackberries, and so, you know, so Joe and anyway, so we just watched this. So Russell and I always keep in touch. He always sends me the sweetest little text, just say, I love you and things like so lovely. I have that, you know, all these years later, because I'm such a big fan of Russell's. And anyway, so I said to him, I said, darling, that was absolutely wonderful. I'm sitting here with Stuart Bevan, and we just watched this, and how brilliant it was. And there was this thing, he said, I can't even speak, he said. My little Joe in the nut hutch with her little professor watching me on TV. How cute is that?
I can imagine he exploded.
He was he said, I am now a fanboy who is about to pass out. It's lovely. And just to think, too, that we had this friendship and this wonderful relationship all these years later. In fact, his daughters, I've had them both live with me periodically when they've been, you know, between homes. And he was just, oh, you know, darling, you're so lovely, you have the girls, it's great.
Going along the Russell T. Davies thing, can you talk about what it's like coming to the Sarah Jane Adventures? Because, I mean, I don't know if I can listen to you talk about it without crying, but because it's just the most wonderful thing ever.
Do you know how it happened, how I got it? And I have told this story before. Sorry, I'm centering myself here. Am I sounding okay? Am I making sense?
Yes.
Just have to keep reminding me because I'm just like,
Touch back. Touch your back, we're good.
I come back from Australia and I brought with me, you know, I thought, well, if I'm going back home to live in England, I've been living in America, I've been living in Australia, I had 3 careers, if you like, because I just go off and become somebody else, and, you know, and I had to go to Australia because I had very sick children, and, you know, long story, I had to get to a warmer climate, so I just thought, well, where can Liza said, come, and I said, no, I feel it's got to be something different, so I knew one person in Australia, so off I went, and things took longer than I thought, and rah. Finally, I escaped from Australia. And,
it was a penal colony.
It was, but I'm the first one they actually threw out. Anyway, so I was walking along, I was going to see a show in the West End. Oh no, this was before that. I was looking after my god dogs, Bin Bag and Oscar. And so I was just sitting there. Well, one big dreadlocks. Right? I mean, you just don't know. Every now and again, you'd be having a big snuggle and you go, that's not the right end, is it? I can say a lot. I'm leaving it at that because you got it. And anyway, so that's Big Bag. And then Oscar was sort of a bit more racy, you know. And I used to get them to write notes to their mummy, and I used to use my hand like a paw. And I do all these really wacky drawings, and then I would say that they had to do lessons, and so Bin Bag said, we had to do Latin today, and Oscar was very naughty, and he kept saying pro bono, and, you know, I mean, it just, and so all of these we kept. I'm actually very tempted to make a children's book out of all the lessons.
I think you should.
And they did drawings of each other and naughty bits too. Because dogs are a bit naughty, you know. And so they like the word poo-poo. And I know it's so sad, isn't it? Where do I? But you just know who these dogs are, and they just have the rights, you know. Anyway, so I'm.
Give Terry Malloy's bear a run for his money as a book author. You know, this is the thing that can happen.
Anyway, so I'm sitting there, and the phone rang, and it was Gary Russell. Who, you know, it's his fault. I do Irish Wild Time.
Okay.
You know, so you blame Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Gary.
Yeah, right. Anyway, so I was picked up the phone. He said, "Hello, darling." Hi, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, just hanging out with Ben Bag and Oscar." And he said, "Oh, well, just remember, don't tell anyone." Now, you know, so I said, "Don't tell anyone what?" He said, "I can't tell you." You know those kind of conversations that you have, and you think, well, where are we going with this? So I looked at Oscar and Big Bag, I said, yeah, okay. He said, "So call your agent on Monday." This was a Sunday. Right, okay, I'll call my agent. So I rang my agent and I said, "Hey, Peter, darling." I said, I got a phone call from Gary Russell telling me that I mustn't say anything, but I was to call you, but I don't know what it is that I'm not supposed to say anything about. And he said, "I can't tell you."
Oh, for God's sake.
Now, I mean, I'll take a lot in my life, but this is getting silly. Because if I'm not to tell anyone, how can I tell someone something I don't know that nobody will tell me? Tell me, and then I'll tell you I won't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Is it bad that what you just said made perfect sense to me?
Bin Bag and Oscar agree. Anyway, so day after that, I'm walking along, and I got a bit lost in the West End as I was doing my own show. Then I came back with my one-woman show, Betty Davis show, where I played 9 people. And I was, you know, busy working with that, and had lots on my mind, and I promised to go and see the opening night of this other show. So, and I hadn't been back in London for long, so I was a bit discombobulated. And I got the phone rang, and they said, and this voice said, "Hello, darling, it's Russell here." And I said, "Sorry, Russell who?" Well, you know, right. And he said, "Russell T. Davies." He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm actually trying to find a theatre." He said, "Oh, I'll Google it for you. What are you looking for?" He's in LA, I'm in the middle of London, I've got Russell T. Davies on the phone, and he's Googling me to the theatre. Just a normal day, or, you know, and a secret that I mustn't tell that I don't know what is. Right. So he said to me, "Oh, darling," he said, "Oh, I'm glad you're doing it. It's lovely you're doing it." He said, and he said, "It's cheaper for us now you're back in London." And I went, "Doing what? Right, where?" He said, "Oh, you're coming back to play Joe for us. I've written you a script." Nothing would come out of my mouth. That's rare. Nothing. I couldn't even cough. You know, just nothing. And anyway, so next thing I know, I'm actually getting ready to do it. I'm talking to Liz, Liz and I got on really well. We kind of, because she did have a tough time taking over from me, from John, and it's kind of well known, I think, around that it was difficult for her. And that's why she came so beautifully into her own with Tom. Who's a very different Tom now, because I'm working with him. I mean, she worked very well with Tom. And because both Tom and John had their aspects, and we managed, she dealt with Tom's very well, and I dealt with John's very well. You know, both wonderful, lovely men, but you know, we all have our little bits and pieces, don't we, that we need to be looked after.
We fear change.
Exactly, and you get very used to working with someone. And when Liz went on her awfully big adventure, I was immediately asked to go and talk on BBC. And I said something which I truly meant from my heart. And I said that she was the quintessential Doctor Who girl. In my eyes, she just ticked all those boxes. And she stayed Sarah Jane right to the very end. You know? Yeah. And she was great because, you know, I said, the kids are going to be tuning in to see this program. I just need nothing. I just know there's an accident waiting to happen there. Wire, you know, like that wire that I managed to jump the other day. But yeah, she was really amazing. And I said, what's it going to become? They're going to sort of see this little old thing. And I have to tell you, I cut my own hair. Because I thought, well, I'm one of those actresses, darling, and you know, if I have been up the Amazon and changed myself to Robert Mugabe, and you know, and done all these things, and and she'd been down to Yancey in a tea chest. I mean, what was this woman thinking? She had 7 children and 13 grandchildren. She's dropped them to the bottom of a mountain and say, call it Santiago, because that's where we are, darling. And, you know,
terribly adorable grandson.
Oh, hello.
Right?
Did he go on to a good career?
Yeah. I didn't want to use him. He's such a doll.
He is the sweetest, and we got on like an absolute house on fire.
I believe that.
We shared the same taste in music, and my nickname on the show was Granny Groove. But I thought, you know, I wanted these actors. So I got these nail scissors, and I thought, right, she's been up there, and you can see from the photographs, and I just lobbed my hair off.
You got method on your hair.
I did.
I love it.
I got method on my hair, and I arrived to the makeup caravan, and I looked at Liz with this long, auburn, lustrous hair,
perfectly coiffed,
and I thought, what the hell was I thinking? I am now, but in a strange sort of way, I think it sort of paid off because it was Joe, not me.
Yeah, well,
and I truly believe that, you know, we do see too many movies where people sort of have just got out of a plane crash and they have one little bit of dirt there, and their hair looks absolutely stunning, you know, or you know, somebody's just had this incredible evening and they wake up and their head is on the, you know, it's sort of Joan Collins moment, and their head is on the pillow, and they've got a hibiscus flower there that hasn't died and been slept on, and you know, and I'm afraid I got method on my hair. So when you look at that, please be caring towards the moment that I had. You know, it was done with nail scissors.
That entire episode, I cry all the way through it, so I couldn't. My vision is sort of like how you described yours.
I tell you, that moment,
one big blur.
That moment, and it was so sweet because Matt, who you asked about earlier, he looked at me, and he knew this was quite a difficult moment. And also, you, as an actress, one of the things you learn is, and I can, there are a few of you aspiring out there. One of the things that you learn is if you just, you know, when people just cry, it's not nearly as emotional as the stopping yourself from crying.
Yeah.
You know, like, if I hold it, I shouldn't be doing that. Why am I doing the action?
You're going to adjust yourself more.
No, I'm not going to do that. But if you do that, and so I had to find that wonderful place where Joe was at, because Joe was not a woman given to, you know, she got over everything real quick, and, you know, and that moment when she realized it really is him, you know, and he said to me, darling, he said, as long as you like to do this, he said, because this is a very, very special moment, you know, for even me. So I said to him, I said, well, you've been running around with 2 pensioners all day. You know, this is very, but truly, he was very understanding, because that scene had to be played just right.
Yeah.
And I hope that I did it. Yeah. You know, that I got it, and the fact that she kind of laughs through her tears. And I think that's much more touching than when someone just goes, oh,
Yeah.
why is it like you know.
No, it's perfect. It's such a love letter. And I mean, was it like this for you guys that it brings? It was such a gift on Russell T Davies' part to write that. I think for everybody, because we got such wonderful closure. You know, when like the scene where he's talking to you and saying how proud he is. I'm just the, you know, little girl with skin knee, just I'm a mess. And then at the end when Sarah Jane is rattling off, oh, and this happened, and they're teachers over here, and this one is, you know,
it was
discovered.
great, wasn't it?
Really? Keep talking, please. Thank you. And it's this wonderful closure because we never know.
Well, that's it, and I think that was a great moment. It was very clever, Russell, and I think, you know, he knew Jo so well. He knew exactly how her life would have gone.
Yeah.
And it was the perfect way. I mean, Jo learned everything from her doctor about saving other worlds and other planets. And you can see that she took all that and she has taken it into her own life and her own planet with her closest approximation to get the Doctor. And of course, the Green Death probably had one of the most extraordinary ends.
Oh my God.
Which was a real, because to be able to, you have to have a very tight team to be able to play a goodbye sequence without words.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not going to register. And then the lovely thing now, of course, is I've come back on audio as I call her Old Joe. There's Old Joe and Young Joe. I mean, it should be Joe Jones, Joe Franco, but and it's lovely because you're really now seeing everything that she learned from the Doctor. She actually confesses in one episode that she was actually in love with the Doctor. And Stephen Moffat said to me way just before he took over, he said, there was always something I'd like to take a little bit further that you and John made me feel that there was something very special in that relationship. And then you can see they started to explore it a bit more in the later years.
I loved it. I loved the relationship, and I loved Jo, and I loved watching her struggle to prove herself, to prove that no, I'm not a Bond girl. I have more than a pretty face. I can actually do things.
Jo wasn't even a pretty face. Yeah. No, she wasn't. Jo was just kind of interesting. No, I mean, in terms of pretty, you're talking Gemma Coleman. That's pretty. As John Pertwee said, he said, whatever it is, none of it works, but it all works together. He described me. I mean, I do. As my children always say, babies like you because you look like a muppet. And John said it. He said, her mouth is too big, her legs are short. Well, yes.
I'm like, hi.
But big mouths were fashionable in my day. I had to put makeup over my lips and around there to make my mouth small. Now everybody's injecting. And I spent years hiding that.
Me too. I promise that. I took me years to grow into it.
I was called the wide-mouthed frog.
Big dagger.
I walked on stage once and there's a girl in my suit, and I literally walked on stage, and I came on with all the right attitude to play the girl in my suit, right? And I just said my first line, and this voice from out the back said, "Here, hasn't she got a big mouth?" Now, it took like that after that. I tell you, it took me about 20 minutes to actually stop doing that. Just that I shared that.
Did you eventually grow into it?
Grow into my mouth? Yeah. I wish I could stop what came out of it sometimes.
Yeah. It took me years to be able to have the moxie to wear red lipstick. Without trying to de-emphasize.
Well, in London, if I wear red lipstick and I stand on the corner and it's near Christmas, people start shoving parcels down me.
Connecting traffic.
You got to be very careful.
Oh my dear. Does anybody have a last question to bring this home with? Now there's all these hands. Pick a hand.
Let's pick them both, and we'll do them. So we'll go with you, and then we'll go with you.
If someone could only watch one story from when you were in Doctor Who, which one would it be?
Terror of the Autons, the first one. I think it's a jolly good place to start because that gives you a little indication of where this little person might go. And I thought too, because it was a very extraordinary episode for Doctor Who, very non-child friendly. Is all I'm going to say. Would I let my children watch that? Yeah.
Darling, where were you?
Hi, sweetie. How are you?
Good, you?
Hello, darling. How are you? I can see who you are now. That's how I mind.
I heard after you've done the Sarah Jane Adventures and after Liz passed away, they'd asked you to have your own show similar to that. Is there any truth in that?
Well, I think we'll say no for now. I think no is the best answer I can give you.
There had been one other hand. I saw there were three magical hands.
Yeah, he had two up.
Yeah, I was just wondering what.
Oh, hello, Sean.
Hello. I was just
I tried
wondering.
to kidnap him yesterday.
Oh dear.
I mean, it was like something out of Little Britain. I'm running him around in the wheelchair.
All the Benny Hill music playing.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just missing the theme music. I was just wondering what you do when you get flustered or rattled on stage or in a role. What do you do when that happens?
I kind of don't get rattled a lot, but lots of things have happened to me on stage, especially because I don't see very well. I mean, I did play a movie I did once, which I thought I'd take that one rather than the stage one, because they're pretty similar stories. But I was doing a movie with the little boy Henry Thomas from E.T. In Australia, and we had this like night shoot, which is like 4 o'clock in the morning, and there was this very, very dramatic moment when I seemed to be the only woman in the village. In this film, every time something happened and people came running out of their houses, there was no women. So it was a little weird, but hey, that's Australia. So, so there was this moment, and it was right at the end of the film. It was all about the dream time and a 13-year-old boy becoming a man through the Gaddafi man. It was all of it. And right at the end, I had to have this really heartfelt moment with my husband, talking about how we needed to let the children now grow up and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I played this scene from, I know, darling. I played this scene literally with every piece of emotion and care and love, and it was 4 o'clock in the morning, I was tired, and they take my glasses, and I played the scene, and then there was a wonderful round of applause, and they said, Katie, that was marvellous, but that's not your husband.
And I have to tell you, it's been pretty much my life. Nice try, but not your husband. Oh my goodness.
Can we please applaud
Wish her luck. I won't be ill there.
That's okay, I'm prepped.
Thank you all so much. Much, much, much.
Have a wonderful rest of the night.